There's been mixed reaction to the minimum wage proposal of 3,500 rand a month made by the NEDLAC advisory panel. President Jacob Zuma will today meet with the 101 ANC veterans who have called on him to resign. And the Northwest Premier, Supremo Homopelo, has sent his condolences to the family of 4 people who died when a cruise boat on the Hartbeespoort Dam near Brits caught fire on Saturday. Now, those are all your headlines, but before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front. A very good morning. It was a busy weekend, wasn't it?
Elvis, was a massive weekend. And yes, we do know that there's an elephant in the room, but we'll talk about the Springboks and Alistair Coetzee a little later. Let's bring everybody up to speed with what happened yesterday. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports.
The shift that our boys put in today was magnificent, and conditions weren't easy, but a magnificent shift from everybody.
Golden Arrows shoot to the second spot in the Absa Premiership after their 1-0 victory over Highlands Park.
Hazard's corner. Costa! Chelsea breakthrough 5 minutes before half-time.
Diego Costa nets a poacher's goal against Middlesbrough as Chelsea rocket to the top of the log of the 6 consecutive Premier League victories.
And the first goal.
The 2016 Barclays ATP World Tour Finals champion, Andy Murray.
Andy Murray saves the best for last as he dispatches his nemesis Novak Djokovic to win the straight shootout for the year's end world #1 ranking in the ATP World Tour Final. All this and more I've got for you in the sports bulletin about 10:40 or so, but for now it is back to Elvis, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this morning. President Jacob Zuma will today meet the 101 veterans of the ANC who have called on him to resign. Now, earlier this month, the veterans spoke out about their concerns about the declining state of the country, calling for the ANC to hold an early conference to elect a new leadership. Issues expected to be discussed include the battles between the Hawks, the NPA, SARS and the Treasury. The former Public Protector's State of Capture report will also be discussed.
Namhlanje bagqugquzela imhlangano ngaphandle kwezakhiwo ze-ANC. Bathi bona babaluleke kakhulu ukudlula laba base-distraction.
2 weeks after that statement, President Jacob Zuma is heeding the call to meet the ANC veterans.
The national officials of the ANC top 6 are part of the working committee.
So, President,
the entire working committee is expected to be part of, to constitute the ANC delegation.
Former President Thabo Mbeki had also urged his successor in a letter not to ignore the veterans. The ANC 101, as they've become known, are unhappy with the party's state of affairs. They accuse the leadership of allowing certain individuals to trump the constitution.
We must do something and do it now, irrespective of the consequences.
The veterans want the ANC to go to a consultative conference, but this request could be a bit late as the ANC has already set its plans for 2017 ahead of the elective conference. This is the same message the party has made to COSATU affiliates like NEHAO and the CWU, who have called on the president to step aside.
We have agreed there is no early conference, so there's not even a talk about anything in between. We are preparing for the policy conference mid-year next year in June here in Gauteng. So it's all systems go for the national conference. If anybody wants to change the leadership of the ANC, participate internally in the ANC, influence that outcome, it can only happen in next year December, nothing between now and next year December.
At the meeting, the ANC could call on the veterans to urgently convene their own league conference as resolved by the NEC. Aldrin Simpier, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Now, we'll go to that meeting in a short while to find out what exactly is happening. They will also have analysts here in studio to discuss this, so you have to stay tuned. Now, there's been mixed reaction to the proposed figure for the national minimum wage. NEDLAC's advisory panel proposed that the national minimum wage will be capped at 20 rand per hour, or about 3,500 rand per month. Parties are now taking the proposal to their constituencies for consideration. The Economic Freedom Fighters and NAFCOC have meanwhile said that the figure is too low. It's about 1,000 rand less than what Labour initially demanded. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa announced the proposal yesterday. Labour experts say the proposed wage will address inequality and boost economic growth.
Where do you want to peg a national minimum wage? Because you've almost got a contradiction. It's a contradiction in terms. You may want a high figure of 20,000, but at the same time you'll wipe out a lot of jobs. Some may say it is too, this 3,500 is too high. If they say so, it basically means forever and in a day, the bulk of working people in South Africa will remain in wage poverty. Is that what we want?
Now, speaking earlier on Morning Live, Professor Imran Valodia, who is the chairperson of the advisory panel, explained the next step in the national minimum wage process.
We're making in the proposal on this is that you want to have a 2-year adjustment period where you allowing firms to adjust to this new regime, and in those 2 years, we're saying that the enforcement shouldn't be to sort of penalize those who don't do it, but rather to provide the capacity for them to be able to make the adjustment.
So the question on the poll that we posed to you, which I would like you to participate in on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, is the following. Is that 3,500 Rand enough? That new minimum wage, the proposed wage, I might add as well. It's a proposed minimum wage, lots of discussions before that can be ratified. 76% of you are saying no, it is too little. 24% are saying yes. Keep them coming. There's 125 votes in right now. You've got 23 hours more to vote. Now, Northwest Premier Supramo Mapelo has sent his condolences to the family of 4 people who died when a cruise boat on the Hartbeespoort Dam near Brits caught fire on Saturday. At least 200 passengers are believed to have been on the boat. The fire department has joined the South African Maritime Safety Authority in investigating the fire that started in the kitchen of the cruise boat.
It's gone too soon.
Recalling the last time she saw her mother alive, not knowing that these precious moments would be their last.
Yesterday, I did her makeup, I ironed her clothes, I helped her get dressed, I took her to the salon to do her hair, I did everything with her. Oh God. I love my mom, yo.
Mulapi, affectionately known as Nomsambata, drowned during the tragedy. The mother of 3 has been described as a woman who lived for her children.
Yo, my mom was my best friend. She was always there for me. We spoke about everything. She always supported me in everything I did, even though she'd be against it, but she was always there for me and my sister. And my brother, everything she did was for us. Yo, God.
Alongside her colleague and best friend, Portia Gumete, who's believed to have organized the trip. Part of a group of Tiger Brands employees enjoying their year-end function.
These cruise people have not even come here, and the sun is setting again. They should be responsible to tell us what happened. We are even hearing different stories from her colleagues. I don't know when they are planning to come here and explain to us.
Northwest Premier Supra Mahoma-Pelu has urged authorities to speed up the investigation into the cause of the tragedy. Mahoma-Pelu also thanked emergency teams and members of the public for their swift response. Mahlako Komane, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Now, our focus today is on the ANC veterans, the 101 veterans, ANC veterans, that is meeting the president, the top 6, as well as the NWC today, to discuss a number of issues. And we're asking you, What are your expectations? Let us know on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom as well as on the Facebook page, and we'll read those comments as we proceed. But right now, let's start off that conversation with Eben.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very good morning to you if you've just joined us. Of course, landmark day for the ANC today. Let's just get this bug out of my face. Now, let's look back. The MKVA is aggrieved that the ANC's agreed to meet 101 veterans today. Its leader, Kevin Mpachwe, made this comment here in Johannesburg.
As the MKMVA prepares to celebrate its 55th anniversary, all eyes will be on Irene near Pretoria, where the ANC will meet some of its oldest cadres over their concerns about the party. But the MKMVA leader holds a different view.
You can't, when you see counter-revolution, comrades, come in, and then we still say, no, comrades, let's give them a hearing. We were not taught those politics as MK. Unfortunately, we disagree with our leadership here. This is our view that we think they were not supposed to be listened to.
Mpachwe defended President Jacob Zuma, saying the ANC leader is being targeted because he's trying to address the thorny issues of economic disparity and inequality in the country.
It is because he is now changing the gear to say the freedom without economy, power, comrades, is useless. And that's where we must take our energy to, comrades, to fight the big white monopoly capital.
Preparations and nominations for the elective conference will start in earnest next year. And this is likely to generate hot debate within the ANC. Ntlantlakatlane, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be a very heated exchange as we can expect today. Now, joining me in studio this morning is our SABC's acting political editor for radio news, Busi Chimombe. Very good morning to you, Busi. Thanks for being with us.
Yes, good morning, Eben.
It's kind of a landmark day for the ANC today, is it? What's your expectation from this meeting, or do you think it's kind of been blown out of proportion a little bit?
Look, I think it's been a long time coming. I think we know straight after the Constitutional Court judgment, you had the likes of Ahmed Kathrada, for instance, writing a letter to President Zuma and asking him to step down. And I think this is just part of the momentum that has actually grown from that particular letter. And just in terms of expectations, I don't think that we can expect a lot. I think, first of all, the veterans themselves are probably not clear about, some are more hardline than others. Some want the president to step down. Some people are talking about a consultative process. So I think even amongst themselves, although there is an understanding that they're unhappy with the way the parties currently run, just in terms of what their demands are and what they want to see happen, I think that is still very up in the air. And I think once you don't have that kind of a united front, it becomes very difficult to push for your demands to be met.
Now, of course, let's just do a little bit of housekeeping about how matters will proceed today. We hear about a pre-meeting and several meetings and so forth. Just talk us quickly through the process of today.
Well, what is going to happen is we're expecting that there will be a delegation. I mean, we know that there are 101 signatories from the stalwarts, but we're not expecting that all of them are going to be there. So obviously there's going to be a delegation from that side that will meet with the NWC. And even that is, has been a little bit of a difficulty, because when the stalwarts initially asked for a meeting with the ANC, what they wanted is that they wanted to meet with the top six. But then it became clear the ANC decided that the top six is not a structure, a standalone structure, so they must meet with the entire NWC. And you can say various things about that. There are some who believe that the reason why they're going to be meeting with the NWC is because it's actually a move to try and shield the president from actually dealing with some of the issues that they're going to bring up, some of them which are quite personal and relate specifically to him.
So would it, within that context, would it be fair to say then that the president today will meet his fiercest critics, if one can call it that?
I would say so. I would say so. And you're talking about people that you cannot basically just be very flippant in terms of pushing aside their concerns. These are very well-respected people, people who have been in the trenches, who have the credibility, and once you have people like that actually questioning you, it's very difficult for it simply to be shrugged off. So I think it is actually going to be really quite a robust type of interaction.
Within the context of what you've just said then, what do you make then of in the last week we've seen, of course, Kevin Patrick coming out and criticising the veterans. Some of those comments were made out to be irresponsible. How do you view that specific incident then?
Well, I think it just speaks to the factions that you see amongst members of the ANC. I mean, what you're seeing is this meeting is actually talking about the challenges and the difficulties of a very divided movement. I mean, and we're not particularly surprised at the fact that the MKMVA would come out and say this about the stalwarts, because we do know that the MKMVA together with the ANC Youth League, the ANC Women's League are the president's strongest defenders. So no surprises there.
Quite often in South Africa, we like to paint out one fall guy, one person gets to carry the can for all the ills in South Africa, be it economic or otherwise. In this case, do you see that as fair?
Well, I think the very fact that the NWC, the entire NWC is meeting with the stalwarts is a talk speaks to that very idea, the idea that after the Constitutional Court and what happened with the August elections, the fact that the NEC, the top leadership of the ANC, basically said they're going to take collective responsibility for the mistakes that have been made, for the support that has actually been lost. So I think this and them meeting today is basically a reflection of that taking collective responsibility.
And what do you expect of the tone of today's gatherings? I think the tone and the outcomes from here will be quite important for the direction going forward.
Well, the issue is that it is a closed meeting, and I think we go into a situation where the ground is a little bit tainted. I mean, you do know, we have heard, and there's been difficulties on the part of the president that these stalwarts have come out publicly. They've been talking to the media, and there'll definitely be some kind of strain that says, if you're part of the ANC, you mustn't work against the ANC, you must work within the structures of the ANC. We are at Luthuli House, you know where to find us. Why are you going to the media? So I think just starting from that point of view, there's going to be a little bit of difficulty, people a little bit aggrieved about the direction that the stalwarts have gone. But in their defense, Director General, the former Director General in the presidency, Frank Chikane, spoke about the fact that, since before September, they've been asking and writing letters wanting to meet with the president, and these calls were not heeded. So I think on both sides there will be, we did try, but you were not actually heeding our call.
Now, just to wrap it up quickly, we've heard, of course, that there's a document from the veterans doing the rounds called "For the Sake of Our Future" or something like that, the title of this document. Do you have any idea what's in it?
Well, we can speculate about what's in it. I mean, I think it will speak to the fact that, and you said it in your intro, the fights between the NPA, the Hawks, the state of capture report, a lot of these things are actually going to be ventilated via such a document.
Ventilated is a very nice word, Busi. I like that. It will all be ventilated today. We're given a lot of air in the media right here from the show throughout the rest of it. Busi Shimombe is our acting political editor for Radio News. Thank you for being with us. Of course, it's a discussion that will continue throughout the rest of the morning. You can send us your views. Of course, our question of the day is, what is your expectation of today's meeting between the President, the NWC, and then the 101 veterans, as it were, or as it's called now in the media? Send it to us at SABC Newsroom. We'd love to hear what you think about this. That we're going to have more analysis and discussion around that very Very development and very important meeting today. But let's go onto our social media. Quickly have a look what you can see there. Let's just recap the weekend because it's been a busy weekend. Of course, here in Joburg, for all of those on your bikes, it was the 94.7 Cycle Challenge took place yesterday. Yes, one of Joburg's biggest and most fun cycle challenges. The winner of the men's leg of the 2016 Cycle Challenge, of course, was Brandon Davids in first place. And the winner of the women's race is Charlotte Becker. Here are some of the pictures for those of you who were complaining yesterday that all the roads in the city are closed. Well, they were closed for good reason. Still, of course, looking at the big sporting news from the weekend. Yeah, the lowest of lows for the Boks. They were beaten by Italy. It's even worse than being beaten by Japan, I promise you. And there you have the memes coming out. Let's make the Springboks great again. Donald Trump in a Bok jersey. There are quite a lot of memes doing the rounds, and a lot of them, of course, are aimed at the Springbok coach. Then, today, family members whose loved ones died at the weekend at the hashtag Hartbeespoort ferry fire accident will have to identify the bodies. Further investigations are underway as we speak. Then, of course, all the talk at this hour is the hashtag doom. Yet another pastor has used uncanny methods in his church. This time, well, doom bug spray was sprayed in the faces of congregants. Yes, only in South Africa we have these kinds of things. It seems quite original and unique the way we congregate in church. Now, this tweet says it's concerning that people genuinely accept and believe that doom will heal them. Yes, it is. It is an idiosyncrasy, I suppose. Now, in some international entertainment news, rock band Green Day, they've added in some new lyrics during a concert at the weekend as they chanted, "No Trump, no KKK, no fascist USA." Wow, interesting. Finally, Selena Gomez won Artist of the Year at the AMAs, that's the American Music Awards, but it was a powerful speech that blew everyone away. You can go onto our Facebook page and get the speech right there. Now, remember, we're also running a poll today. We're asking you about the national minimum wage of 3,500 Rand, 20 Rand an hour. Is it enough? There you have the numbers telling us right now. We've got 123 votes in. Only 24% of people say yes, it's enough. 3/4 are saying no way. No way can you live today on 20 Rand an hour. Now, let's just have a look at some of your comments on the poll when we talk about national minimum wage. This one comes from Kathy van Feren. There is no work. This puts a strain on everybody, she says. Goodman Godla says, Newsroom, another insult from government to the workers. What is 3.5 actually in this country? We demand 4,500, not less. Goodman, I can tell you, labour in South Africa is 30 times more expensive than in China already. We have to find a way to make it work for everybody. My Blackness says, Newsroom, an insult to black people, not enough. Talking about the national minimum wage. Matome Choshe says, 3.5 is equal to CEO's monthly expenditure on every day's lunch, if not less, says Matome. You're probably right, it's probably less. Vuyo says, Newsroom, reasonable, but not enough. Fair comment. This one from On Your Vest says, even an uneducated person don't deserve this kind of money. Things are expensive out here. Yes, everybody's battling, everyone's struggling. Let's take a look at our picture of the day. This one comes from the CICA, Crime and Intelligent Community Awareness. Now, it talks about, of course, South Africa, and this image shows, well, that Hartbeespoort Dam ferry fire. It was really very, very, it was heartbreaking, really, to be honest, to see people, well, just outside of Johannesburg, well, die in this kind of tragedy. Now, for our comment of the day, of course, it was another tragic weekend for South African sports fans. Darren Mann sums it up. He says, the agony of trawling news sites on a Sunday after a day like Saturday, something only sports fans will truly understand. Talking about the Boks against Italy here. The Springboks got beaten by Italy in an incredible result. Now, let's take a look at what's in our courts today. In Johannesburg, 3 men, Edmond Lovu, Thabo Nkala and Mduduzi Lawrence Matibela are expected to appear in the High Court sitting in the Palm Range Palm Ridge Magistrates Court for allegedly attacking two couples in Rhodes Park. Don't forget, the counts are 2 of murder, 2 of rape, and then robbery with aggravating circumstances. Still, here in Johannesburg, a man found with illegal automatic rifles, police uniform and bulletproof vests in Midrand at the weekend is expected to appear in a magistrate's court there in Midrand today. Then, in the Western Cape, where the case against 8 Khayelitsha police officers facing charges of fraud is due to be heard in the Bellville Commercial Crimes Court. Now, the 6 men and 2 women face 16 charges. They were part of a specialized unit at the Khayelitsha police station. It's alleged that they filed false claims for travel allowances and accommodation. All 8 have been suspended. We'll keep you updated on that story and more. But of course, today, well, we're talking about the veterans, 101 veterans meeting the president. That's our question of the day. What do you expect to come out of here? Be interesting for you to tweet us at SABC Newsroom. First, though, we're going to take a short break.
Now, as you know, our focus today is on the ANC that's meeting the 101 veterans this morning. There's lots of expectations around this. There's also a question that we pose to you around it. What are your expectations from today's meeting? That Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom as well as on our Facebook page. Now, for analysis on the scheduled meeting between the African National Congress and its veterans, we're now joined by political analyst Dumisani Hlope here in studio. Very good morning to you, sir.
Thank you. Good morning to you.
And also in Pretoria, we do have Professor Samadoda Fikeni. He's going to join us shortly with Eben on the other one there in Pretoria. Very good morning to you, Professor.
Good morning, and good morning to your viewers, and good morning to Dumisani as well.
Now, let's start off here in Johannesburg. Mr. Hlope, firstly, what do you think of the decision by the African National Congress to finally meet its veterans, the 101 that we're talking about?
Well, it's a brilliant decision. It's a good decision. But I think over time there could have been a better engagement. I think part of the challenges of the ANC is that when it comes to elective conferences, the victorious group has a tendency to discard those that they defeated and render them useless in the utility of the movement. So they are very brilliant and experienced stalwarts within the ANC that you know, are just loitering out there, and yet they could be used very, very effectively for the organization. So it's brilliant. Unfortunately, it comes in the context of tensions in an environment of toxic politics. And so it is going to be us versus them. So it's not going to be an extremely useful initiative. But I think what would be more useful is what they decide to do after this in terms of ongoing engagement.
Now, the 101 veterans did indicate that they've tried at various times to engage with the president and the top 6 to talk to them, but that failed. Now they're meeting today, but there are some within the movement that is feeling not so kosher about this. MKA-VA veteran or leader, yes. Kevin Mapatswe, says that he's not very happy about this. And what can we read from that?
Well, I think it's a question of leadership. Does the ANC have a leadership that has the ability to collapse all its different formation into one single driving entity. So perhaps that has not happened. This is why you find that the ANC Youth League will pronounce on something differently from what the MK Veteran does, and the alternatively from what the ANC Women's League does. So it's not so much what the different parts are saying, but the inability of the center to hold all of these formations within the ANC to speak with one voice on similar issues.
We also have Professor Samadora Fikeni. Eben, you got him on the other end there.
Yeah, let's bring in Dr. Fikeni. Very good morning to you, Dr. Fikeni, in our Pretoria studios. You saw the pronouncements made by the president, of course, talking about this meeting being organized in the wrong way outside of the structures. How do you view this? How do you see this relationship between the veterans and the president, but also the ANC top six? How do you see this right now?
Well, I do think that it is at its lowest at this stage because the president feels like he's a victim and is quite bitter about some of the pronouncements. And this you could sense from his speeches in the rural areas of KwaZulu-Natal and in Pietermaritzburg. So at this moment, I do think that it will be left to some of the leaders who are not at the center to bring together the two contending parties, because if it is left to them, I don't think there will be a common ground.
Within that the context that you're talking about right now, then, today's meeting, what do you expect of it? Or do you see it as doomed before it even started by the sounds of it?
I don't necessarily think it's doomed. That it's even taking place is quite an achievement, because you do have people within the ANC and people within the veterans who feel very strongly that they would not want to see ANC go down on a spiral route as it is now, given its internal factional battles, given the fact how it has managed the issue of Nkandla, how it has managed the issue of state capture, and how it is managing even the losses in the local government elections. So to that extent, you may have a strong push for further consultation, a commitment on the protocols of engagement, and even a possibility of a consultative conference similar to the one you saw in Morogoro and in Kabwe when the ANC was in exile.
Now, on Saturday, the president took another veiled swipe at the party's veterans for going about the wrong way and raising their concerns about the ANC leadership outside its structures. Now, what impact will this statement now have on this particular meeting, Mr. Shlope?
Well, it's very interesting because the bigger context are just the following. The middle class in this country, the mainstream media, have decided to criticize the ANC or President Zuma, not the ANC, President Zuma, from using press conferences, using the mainstream media. And the same applies to the veterans, to the stalwarts. They've equally used the same platform. Now, President Zuma, in his Fight Back campaign, as Professor Samadora Fikeni said, is using the rural areas, particularly the grassroots, to transmit his message. And his Fighting Back message says that, look, there's just a whole range of regime change out there that want to get rid of the ANC, and they are using even some of our people. So it's what we've been seeing in the last few days in the rural KZN has actually been a fight back, so to speak. So this is why this meeting, for example, that we're talking about today is going to be a very hostile meeting. But I expect the president and the NWC to come out a bit more advantageous because they spend lots of time together. They speak with one voice, you know, at least by overwhelming majority, as against the veterans who are essentially a loose coalition. And I don't think they've got a center of power, a central theme that they want to push, except two major themes that either the president steps down, but they need ways to refocus the ANC. So the battle lines are drawn.
Mm-hmm. If I can bring in Dr. Fikeni once again, I want to talk quickly about this, the calls that were made by the veterans earlier in the month. Of course, one of the cornerstone of those calls was an early elective conference. Do you see this part of a kind of trade agreement, or do you think 2017 has been planned by the ANC and they're kind of set on that plan?
Well, I do think that they are generally set on that plan, because those who are calling for an early election are often suspected of trying an early regime change or achieving the removal of President Jacob Zuma by other means. But at the same time, you also have a very simple logistical challenge. Even if ANC wanted to have an early elective and policy conference, after such bruising elections, which were quite expensive, they may not be able to raise funds, but also they may not be able to energize and get their branches ready, given the state of the branches, the state of the regions, which takes some time to even resolve their issues. So it might take exactly more or less the same time to prepare for the December conference of next year. What they may then press for is a consultative conference, because that may even play a role in trying to nullify or even neutralize some of the most brutal factional battles for leadership, which nullify the other faction when they are looking for a leader. So to that extent, ANC might have learned from Polokwane and Mangaung that it is shrinking each time a pure faction rise and it begin to nullify even people with experience.
Dr. Fikeni, just stay with us in our Pretoria studio. We're going to take a short commercial break. We're having a discussion. Of course, we've been asking you the question. The President's meeting the ANC veterans today. What are your expectations? We have with us, of course, political analyst Dumisani Hlope, and in our Pretoria studio, Professor Somadode Fikeni. We'll continue this discussion after a short break.
Now, this morning we're discussing the ANC meeting its 101 veterans. Now, it's supposed to be a heated meeting today, and we'll keep you posted on that meeting. But right now, we're analyzing that and we're asking you a question. The President meets the 101 ANC veterans today. What are your expectations? We'll take a look at your comments on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, as well as on the Facebook page. But in studio here, we have Mr. Dumisani Hlope. He's a political analyst, as well as Professor Somadode Fikeni. He is in Pretoria, visiting professor from UNISA. Now, the ANC leadership has reiterated that it will not recall the president, and many of the ANC veterans have been calling for the president's head. Now, Mr. Hlope, do you think that that will be the case today, or will there be a compromise?
Well, there's no need to be a compromise in any event. For one, the stalwarts are not united on the call for the president to be recalled. Mm-hmm. I think the bigger voices there are suggesting that there should be a way to rebuild the ANC such that it can perform extremely better in the forthcoming 2019 general elections. Mm-hmm. But the problem is that The ANC leadership, on the one hand, it says to the veterans that, look, you must focus on the structures, you must raise your issues through the structures. But the fact is the veterans have no faith in the structures.
Why is that?
Because the structures have been factionalized. They have been captured by those with the bigger finances that use them to access leadership position. So to that extent, you'll find that many people that want to say good things about the ANC, they disregard the structures because the structures have been factionalized and have been financially captured by those that want to access leadership positions. So for that extent, you can't say they must trust the structures and internal processes. So, and secondly, and here's the part of the biggest flaw of this argument of focusing on the structures. People that are within the structures and processes of the ANC are about 1 million or so, right? And those that vote within the ANC processes are somewhere around 1.6 million. But if you check the people that vote at the ANC in general election, the support base, it's approximately 10, 11 million. So why would you want to confine people to that tiny minority when you have got a bigger chunk that you need to deal with? And that is one of the fundamental flaws that the ANC needs to deal with.
You mentioned the unmentionable there, the F word, factionalism. Now, I want to get a response from the both of you, but I want to ask Dr. Fikeni first. This kind of call outside of the structures and the unhappiness that it's caused, is this not the kind of thing that deepens the difficulties of factionalism within the ANC?
Well, I do think that we should be historical in approaching this. There was a time when ANC was doing much of the work within its own ranks. But leading from 2005, when there was a fallout between President Thabo Mbeki then and his Deputy President Zuma, a number of things, including factionalism, were institutionalized. Structures outside, and there were even reported funding from outside countries, were allowed at that particular moment. Just like in this particular case, discipline collapsed. When you talk of people using structures of the ANC, look at the tripartite alliance itself, or even the leagues of the ANC. When ANC says, let's not discuss, future leadership, or let us not speak outside the structures, what happens? MKVA will come and say its own thing, and the Youth League will say something, the Women's League will say something, some sections. So it looks like there is not an attack of those when they speak outside, because they might probably be representing a dominant faction. But the moment any dissenting voice starts speaking outside, like Jackson Mthembu or Motsecha, that's when the issue of structures is emphasized. As Dumsani Hlope was saying, the report by Nkosazana Zuma and the various reports by Secretary General Kgalema Motlanthe then and Gwede Mantashe and political reports by the presidents suggest that the very internal democracy within the party has long been compromised and collapsed at times. And you do have a lot of gatekeeping, a lot of manipulation, use of money. So you can't therefore say, I'm subjecting people to those structures without taking that into account.
Dr. Fikeni, thank you very much for joining us today, coming to you live from the capital, Pretoria. That is Professor and Dr. Zamadoda Fikeni. Of course, we're talking about today's meeting. And I wanted, Mr. Hlope, I wanted your response to what Dr. Fikeni is saying, but also about widening the divide within the ANC.
Look, I absolutely agree with Professor Fikeni in terms of the biasness, in terms of the application of this call to use the structures of the ANC. But I think the bigger problem is that the ANC is still operating in the 1980s mode in 2016. When it was a liberation movement operating underground and it needed a very strong presence within the structures. In fact, the structures were never meant as a liberation movement to be the basis for a grassroots democracy for the ANC. It was the other way around. They were established so that the leadership of the ANC can have a direct control of what happens at the grassroots level, which essentially means that immediately the ANC became the ruling party in a liberal dispensation, it needed to modernize its operation. So, I mean, for example, we are living in a highly technological advanced era in terms of communications. So if someone is not happy with President Zuma, it's kind of, you know, far hardly for one to think that you must wait for a branch meeting when someone can tweet at that moment. So things have changed, but the ANC has not changed its modus operandi, and it's beginning to backfire.
Elvis?
Now, Mr. Hlophe, if the ANC capitulate to the demand by the veterans for the president to step down, what are some of the mechanisms that need to be put in place in order for that to happen?
No, that won't happen. I won't dwell into that because they will look. They will not make that call. I think that I can, you know, guesstimate that they will make the call. They will not make the call for the president to step down. I think they are going to raise a few issues that need to be done for the ANC to regroup. But their biggest problem is that they are moving towards an elective conference. So even the ANC as a whole, the environment of moving towards an elective conference is internally highly contestable. So they won't be able even themselves to speak with one voice.
Now, we only talked about the president this morning, but there's a couple of other issues that will also come out of this agenda. Quickly, what would you think would that be?
I think it will be issues of corruption. It will be issues of good governance. I think it will be issues of adhering to the adhering to decision of institutions of democracy, such as the Constitutional Court on the decision on the Nkandla matter, the public protector on the state capture, and quite a number of other things where you find that cabinet does not speak with one voice, particularly on good governance issues. And all these appointments that constantly get challenged, like at the NPA. So it's as if actually that's factual. The challenges that you see at the ruling party level, somehow they get duplicated at the state level, which is that's very unfortunate because that's where the ANC is the ruling part of everybody.
Mr. Hlophe, I thank you so much for your time and joining us here in studio.
Thank you.
That was Dumisani Hlophe, and also Professor Samadora Fukeni, who joined us from Pretoria, unpacking today's scheduled meeting between the ANC and his veterans. We'll keep you posted on that meeting. You have to stay tuned. But there's a lot of comments around this. Let's go back to Eben.
Yeah, 101 veterans meeting the president today, NWC. What is your expectations was the question we asked you. Let's take a look at a couple of tweets quickly that you guys are sending in. These are your views. El Señor Leon, he says, Newsroom, the president is taking a great path to face with veterans as they're not clear about their intentions and unreasonable. The intentions are clear. They want the president to step down. El Señor. This one from Gabson. He says, Newsroom, they must reconcile and close this matter and move on to important stuff. Sobering views there. Yeah, sobering views. That's what you can get right now. Let's have a look at what is on our Facebook page at this moment. Now, the bulk of exams are expected to start today at the Cape Peninsula University of Technology. Now, these exams were postponed after the institution obtained a court order last week to prevent disruption at external venues. We also see that at least 119 people were killed and more than 150 injured when an Indian express train derailed in the northern state of Uttar Pradesh. That was on Sunday, with the toll set to rise amid a scramble to locate more survivors. Finally, Twitter users and pundits are calling for Springbok coach Alistair Coetzee to resign after the national side slumped to yet another embarrassing defeat, this time against Minnows, Italy, in Florence. On that note, I have Kendall Mahamati here with me in studio to talk a little bit about the Springbok coach. Shame, the man has been personally attacked. Yeah. He has been memed out of sight, and he has been, well,
comes with the territory. Comes with the territory. You're head coach of the Springboks. They lose 7 out of 11 tests in the same year, less than 6 months. That's exactly what's going to happen. You know, Alistair Coetzee knew what he was signing on for when he signed on to be the Springbok head coach. It's a hot seat. It's a hot potato. And it's unfortunate, but this literally does absolutely nothing for the future of our rugby for this to be happening.
I have to be... Honestly, I have to say I started out as a fan of Alistair's because he coached the Stormers for many years. The thing that I was very disappointed with his box side is that a real lack of innovation and a real lack of wanting to try new things and an insistence on kind of not letting go of that old copper stump rugby that we so 100%. Obsessed about. We're sort of caught between the two at the moment, and that's why we're losing.
Italy, who ranked 13th in the world, beat us at our own game. They played 10-man rugby and they beat us at it.
Yeah.
You know, that says a lot about where it is that the Springboks are. No identity. We've had a few of the old players, the Ollie Leroux's, the Bakkies Booters, saying exactly how disappointed they are in the Bok performances of late. And, you know, it's a sad day, really.
It's a sad day, and it's a simple fact that the Boks, well, they don't know whether they want to play it hard and tough or whether they want to throw the ball around. And either of those, it's going to take a complete commitment to the one style of play, isn't it?
It really is, and it's good to actually have to go with the selections as well. You know, once or twice, Tuti, Alistair's made 1 or 2 selections that were really not making sense. Peter Steph du Toit being played out of position.
Playing 3 locks, for instance, against England on a dry day. I just don't get it. But that's what we're talking about. Size, brawn over brains. It seems Alistair got caught in the middle of it and he can't get past the brawn thing. Anyhow, a man that is not very happy about the weekend sport, even because Man United gave away a last-minute goal against the Arsenal. Tsietse Monari with the weather.
Hello there, welcome from the weather desk. Well, the good news is that we're expecting some good rainfall towards southern Africa, especially here in South Africa, over the Eastern Cape Province, the KwaZulu-Natal regions, as well as over some parts of Mpumalanga, the northwest, and going further north and also towards the western side. There's good possibilities of rainfall. Otherwise, patches of just dry weather and clear conditions over Botswana, the northern part of Zimbabwe, and along the central part of Mozambique. Temperature-wise, it's looking quite hot for the Northern Cape Province. Upington, in fact, is one of the hottest ones, as it will go to just around 21 to start off your day, but temperatures will increase to about 33 later into the afternoon. So it's going to be extremely hot there in the central and the southern parts of the country. Do look out for possibilities of rain also towards the northern interior, with possibilities of showers in towards Harare, Bulawayo, as well as over Serowe. And those conditions are expected to keep on rising into those upper 30s. Beitbridge at 36 degrees, Antananarivo at 27, and Maputo reaching a maximum of 33. Those partly cloudy skies are expected to continue right from today up until Tuesday, with rainy weather towards Brazzaville. So these average rainfall patterns are indicated for the next 24 and maybe even to about 36 hours, as they can be quite valid for a long time, especially towards the southern and the central part. Those rainy conditions are expected up north over the central parts of southern Africa. Kampala 17, but it will get a bit warmer to about 23 degrees. Addis Ababa reaching a maximum of 24, 29 for Kinshasa, and basically hot weather and dry conditions right across the northern parts of Africa. A bit of rainfall, patches of clouds are expected over the northern part of Libya. That's it from the weather. Do stay tuned. There should be more later.
Information-hungry viewers stay with SABC News, as issues on the West are different from issues on the East or here in Johannesburg. So it is not surprising that people who follow the news know that there are 2 things for sure: that anything can happen, and SABC News will tell you when it does. Because we keep the nation fully informed. We are SABC News.
ANC moved to ease tensions created by the heated public spat between National Treasury and Eskom.
Eskom denied allegations of impropriety regarding the matter. National Treasury issued a statement accusing Eskom of lying.
The fracas over hairstyles at a Pretoria school has drawn sharp focus on underlying racism and alleged abuse in some schools.
We want relevant answers from the MEC. You must fire the principal.
Here too, similar sentiments of underlying racism.
It just made me feel like I was not worthy enough of an education because of the type of hairstyle that I had. Because yesterday the statement was, writing an exam is a privilege.
16 of South Africa's celebrities were battling it out for 40 grand at the 5th annual Celebrity Cook-Off in Witbank.
We look forward to welcoming everybody to Emlahleni because this is the place of coal.
For a starter, I'll give you guys 45 minutes to prepare, and the main course will be 1 hour 30 minutes.
The team name is Iniqua Stars, the clever choices.
Yes! Manyola Apita.
3 Michelin stars.
Yes!
Like a niece, 2. Drum roll. Swami and the defending champion the Michelin star.
That's Trends Travel every Sunday, 12 to 1 p.m. on SABC News.
Did you know that Vilakazi Street is the only street in the world to have housed 2 Nobel Prize winners? Vilakazi Street in Orlando West, Soweto, southwest of Johannesburg in the Republic of South Africa, has been home to Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Nelson Mandela's house was a modest family house from 1946 and still maintains those features. Archbishop Desmond Tutu still owns his house in Vilakazi Street since 1975 and often goes to stay there when visiting Johannesburg. Because of its popularity, the street has an influx of tourists. Restaurants with local cuisine have mushroomed around it, creating job opportunities for the locals and improving the lifestyle in the area. Orlando West High School in Vilakazi Street is known for its creative role during the famous 1976 uprising.
Welcome back. Yeah, it's just gone 10 o'clock. Very good morning to you once again. You're with the Newsroom team. It's myself, Eben Jansen. I'm with Kendall Makamate. Kendall is here with me until 10:40. He's going to give us a short update shortly, but of course, a couple of big stories today. The 101 ANC veterans, they meeting the ANC NEC and the top 6 today. Now, the meeting, of course, stems from criticism of the president, concerns about the movement and the like. We've been asking you this question today, but before we get to your tweets on that question, the other big story today, we're running a poll on it. New minimum wage was announced yesterday, 3,500 rand, 20 rand an hour. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa came out right now. 146 votes are in, 77%, more than 3/4 are saying, no, sorry guys, sorry. This 3.5 is not enough. 20 rand an hour is not enough. People need more money. Well, our labor is 30 times more expensive than that of China right now. Yes, 30 times, you can Google it. 30 times more expensive. That's what our labor is. So we need to find a way to make it work for everybody if we're going to rebuild our economy. Now let's take a look at some of your tweets with regards to the minimum wage. Monyo Vest says, even uneducated person don't deserve this kind of money. Things are expensive out there, is what he's saying. Then Vuyo Simawo Imonte says, Newsroom, reasonable, but not enough. It can never be enough, is it, Vuyo? Then Matome Chosi says, 3.5 is equal to a CEO's monthly expenditure on every day's lunch, if not less. Probably true. Are there more? Those are your tweets on the minimum wage. Now, you guys have also been tweeting us with regards to the President's meeting with the ANC veterans today. Let's have a look at some of your tweets on that question of the day. Now, this one from Ngamisile Sibia says, I expect them to embrace the Freedom Charter and reject the perpetuation of the colonial economy under Oppenheimer and Rupert. Deep. Very deep. El Senor Leon says, Newsroom, the President is taking a great path to face with the veterans as they're not clear about their intentions and unreasonable, says El Senor Leon. And this one from Gebzan says, they must reconcile and close this matter and move on to important stuff. Right to the heart of it, there's a country to run, there's an economy to secure. This is not important, according to some of us. What do you think? Keep it coming. At SABC Newsroom is where you interact with us. This is the interactive show here on SABC News. But, of course, there's also other news for us to look at. So let's take a look at your headlines. Yeah, there's been mixed reaction to the minimum wage proposal of 3,500 Rand a month made by the NEDLAC advisory panel. President Jacob Zuma will today meet the 101 veterans of the ANC who have called on him to resign. Northwest Premier Supra Mahumapelo has sent his condolences to the family of 4 people who died when a cruise boat on the Hartepeersport Dam near Brits caught fire over the weekend. Those are your top stories at this very hour. Let's go over to Kendall after what was a very busy sporting weekend.
You know what, we look forward to the sporting weekend knowing that it's going to be good or bad come Monday morning. You know I've got lots to report, and some of it good, some of it bad. And this is what's coming up in the sports today.
The shift that our boys put in today was magnificent, and conditions weren't easy, but a magnificent shift from everybody.
Golden Arrows shoot to the second spot in the Absa Premiership after their 1-0 victory over Highlands Park.
Hazard's corner. Costa! Chelsea breakthrough 5 minutes before half-time.
Diego Costa nets a poacher's goal against Middlesbrough as Chelsea rocket to the top of the log after 6 consecutive Premier League victories.
The 2016 Barclays ATP World Tour Finals champion, Andy Murray.
Andy Murray saves the best for last as he dispatches his nemesis Novak Djokovic to win the straight shootout for the year's end world #1 ranking in the ATP World Tour final. All this and more we'll bring into you in more detail at 10:40. For now, it is back to Eben, who's got the news.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kendall. See you a little bit later. Kendall, of course, will be back at about 10:40 with a complete sports update. It's Monday, after all, been a busy sporting weekend. Now, let's go back to our top story. President Jacob Zuma will today meet the 101 veterans of the ANC who've called on him to resign. Earlier this month, the veterans spoke out about their concerns about the declining state of the country, calling for the ANC to hold an early electoral conference to elect new leadership. Issues expected to be discussed include the battles between the Hawks, the MPA, SARS and the Treasury. The former Public Protector's State of Capture report will also be discussed.
Namhlanje bagqugquzela imhlangano ngaphandle kwezakhiwo ze-ANC bathi bona babaluleke kakhulu ukudlula laba base-distraction.
2 weeks after that statement, President Jacob Zuma is heeding the call to meet the ANC veterans.
The national officials of the ANC top 6 are part of the working committee.
So President,
the entire working committee is expected to be part of, to constitute the ANC delegation.
Former President Thabo Mbeki had also urged his successor in a letter not to ignore the veterans. The ANC 101, as they've become known, are unhappy with the party's state of affairs. They accuse the leadership of allowing certain individuals to trump the constitution.
We must do something and do it now, irrespective of the consequences.
The veterans want the ANC to go to a consultative conference, But this request could be a bit late as the ANC has already set its plans for 2017 ahead of the elective conference. This is the same message the party has made to COSATU affiliates like NEHAO and the CWU, who have called on the president to step aside.
We've agreed there is no early conference, so there's not even a talk about anything in between. We're preparing for the policy conference mid-year next year in June here in Gauteng. So it's all systems go for the national conference. If anybody wants to change the leadership of the ANC, participate internally in the ANC, influence that outcome, it can only happen in next year December, nothing between now and next year December.
At the meeting, the ANC could call on the veterans to urgently convene their own league conference as resolved by the NEC. Aldrin Simpier, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Now, in turn, the MKVA is aggrieved that the ANC has agreed to meet the veterans today. Its leader, Kebi Mpachwa, made the comment in Johannesburg recently.
As the MKMVA prepares to celebrate its 55th anniversary, all eyes will be on Irene near Pretoria, where the ANC will meet some of its oldest cadres over their concerns about the party. But the MKMVA leader holds a different view.
You can't, when you see counter-revolution, comrades, come in, and then you still say, no, comrades, let's keep them here. We were not taught those politics as MK. Unfortunately, we disagree with our leadership here. This is our view that we think they were not supposed to be listened to.
Mpachwa defended President Jacob Zuma, saying the ANC leader is being targeted because he's trying to address the thorny issues of economic disparity and inequality in the country.
It is because he is now changing the gear to say the freedom without economy, power, comrades, is useless. And that's where we must take our energy to, comrades, to fight the big white monopoly capital.
Preparations and nominations for the elective conference will start in earnest next year. And this is likely to generate hot debate within the ANC. SABC News, Johannesburg.
Of course, we're asking you the question with regards to today's meeting. Yes, what are your views? We'd love to hear what you think. At SABC Newsroom is where you can tell us what you think on today's question of the day. The President meeting with 101 ANC veterans, of course, have asked the President to step down. I'm joined by the SABC News' own acting political editor, Sophie Mokoena, this morning. Very good morning to you, Sophie. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Eben. Good morning to the viewers.
Sophie, the significance of this meeting, how important is it, or is it a meeting that's been blown out of proportion a little bit?
I think the meeting is quite important because both parties will be able to raise their concerns. You are aware that you have ANC members who are not necessarily at leadership positions. Some of them have been in the leadership positions. Some of them have been loyal members of the party. Some have been in business, in religious organizations, who have issues to raise. But you also have the current leadership in totality. I'm talking about the 6 leaders, and then you have the first structure, which is the National Working Committee, the National Executive Committee, the branches, the regions, the provinces, who also have a view in terms of what's happening within the party. Now, I think in this meeting, if there was to be synergy, both parties must be frank, raise their issues, and of course, they must answer in earnest or in a very honest manner, and people mustn't shy away from raising their concerns. We've seen President Zuma already responding to those concerns, and I think this is a platform for him to also respond, but also those who have issues to raise with him, to raise the issues face to face with him, and moving forward, they must try and find one another.
Do you think there is space for this kind of discussion? If we look at the context, a lot of things have been said. I mean, there's not much discussion that you can have after you ask someone to step down, is there?
That's the problem. And the sad thing within the ANC is that it looks like the organization doesn't want to learn. They had the Morogoro conference before they came back from exile where there were issues. They found a way, the leader then, Oliver Tambo, found a way to ensure that they closed the ranks, but also the synergy and space was created for those who were aggrieved to raise their concerns. Come the first conference in Durban, there were similar tensions inside South Africa. The first conference where Madiba was elected the president officially, but they found one another. And then there was a Mafikeng conference. There were issues even there. You'd recall Winnie Madikizela Mandela wanted to be the deputy president, but then President Zuma, who's currently the president of the party, was elected the deputy president. They found one another. They moved on. They went to Stellenbosch conference. At Stellenbosch, again, when Begi was challenged in the second term, there were issues. There were mumbling and rumblings. The alliance partners wanted Terra Lukwata to be the deputy president. It was quiet there, but Zuma retained his deputy president position. Kampulukwani, that was bad. And here we are. We have a similar situation after they couldn't find one another. And now the question is, this time around, are we going to have a voice of reason or someone who's not credible, who is credible, who can stand up and try and unite all these different groupings?
You're talking about uniting the groupings, and therein lies the difficulty with this kind of meeting that's almost been hijacked in the media also a little bit, because it's kind of happened what's been called outside of the structures. Does this kind of meeting then not present an opportunity to divide even further or to cause even greater divisions within the ANC?
It shouldn't, but it can. It shouldn't, but it can. Because politicians, the problem with politicians, it's about themselves. And sometimes, not all of them are committed to ensuring that whatever they do it in the interest of the people or the organization they serve or the country. Therefore, you have different people with different agendas. But it shouldn't be. If indeed all those who are going to gather there, they want solutions, they must be sober, they must be calm, but they must be honest. They shouldn't sweep things under carpet. If you feel aggrieved, express your view. Don't even shy away. If it means you shouting, shout, but do it in a respectful manner and finally find a solution. So this meeting will show South Africans, the continent and the world at large that ANC is up to the task. It can resolve itself. It can heal itself. Therefore, you need a very sober leadership to do that.
Sophie, that said, there's a lot going on this week. The COSATU CEC is meeting, and that will have almost a direct bearing on the discussions that are happening today. Just tell us about that and what else we should expect.
Yes, as the ANC is meeting with its members or the veterans, you have the Central Committee of COSATU also taking place. And it's a big one also, because the past few weeks we've seen different unions who are affiliated to COSATU making pronouncement about what's happening within the alliance. And of course, the critical issue is the current state the ANC finds itself in and the issues of leadership. Therefore, even there at COSATU, the question is, will the leadership be able to manage the different dissenting views within the federation, and particularly on the issue of whether President Zuma must go or he must finish his term, or what needs to be done to heal the alliance. Therefore, we will be there. We will be monitoring that meeting. Those two stories are our big stories, the ANC National Working Committee with veterans and the COSATU meeting, not leaving out, of course, the minimum wage. We've seen political parties responding. We'll continue today to hear more different views of different political parties and stakeholders, particularly the workers who will be affected.
Let's conclude with today. What do you think would be an outcome? Would in the negotiation that's going to happen today, do you expect something like an early elective conference to become the kind of carrot of negotiation to appease everybody?
Forget. ANC has made it clear. We had Zizu Kota saying they can't go to an early conference, and I also spoke to some senior ANC members, people who are concerned in and outside, and clearly it's unlikely that they will agree that there should be an early elective conference. If that can happen, it might help, because then it will find time to heal itself, because the problem is the next elective conference is in 2017 in December, And then the national elections, it's 2019. So you almost have only 12, 16 months to heal, but also to be united, to campaign for 2019. And then the oppositions are working. And so I don't know, but I'm not hopeful that there will be an agreement on an elective conference. I don't know, but remember they will have a policy conference in June, midterm. Maybe that's where some of these issues might be included in the discussions. So come 2017 elective conference, at least there's some sort of toning down of views. But secondly, I think for me, having covered politics and ANC in particular for quite a long time, and politics in general, the best thing for the ANC is for them as soon as possible to resolve or find some amicable solution going to the conference, how the presidency is going to take shape. The front runners, if they can find one another based on what people want in different structures, those who will be going to the conference, it will really, really assist. I'm just saying, I mean, that's something that's not going to happen. Let's say the two people, whoever, I don't know who are they, if they can find one another to agree, if they can resolve the leadership question, who's going to be the president, who's going to be the deputy, I think if they can resolve that early, it will settle the storm.
That in itself is probably the most difficult question within the ANC right now.
I'm not a politician. It's just my normal, ordinary citizen saying that, or journalist, something that's, I don't think it's easy. But it happened in Durban, the conference where there was a contestation between leaders in different positions. ANC decided, no, you shouldn't contest so much. Yeah, so I don't know, maybe.
That will set the tone, says Sophie Mokoena, as our acting political editor. Thanks for coming in. It's going to be a very busy news day. You're going to have to stay tuned to this very channel as we bring you, well, the outcomes from today's important meeting. Of course, there's also a COSATU CEC meeting that's going to talk about the succession debate that we've just discussed. Then, of course, the question of the day, the meeting with the veterans. What are your expectations with regards to this? Now, keep it coming at SABC Newsroom. Also, of course, the other big story today is the new national minimum wage. Now, there's been mixed reactions to the proposed figure for the new national minimum wage. NEDLAC's advisory panel proposed that the national minimum wage be capped at 20 Rand an hour or 3,500 Rand per month. Parties are now taking the proposal to their constituencies for consideration. But the EFF and NAFCOC have come out and said they believe this figure is too low. It's about 1,000 Rand less than what Labour initially demanded. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa, before he announced the proposal yesterday. Labour experts say the proposed wage will address inequality and boost economic growth.
Peg a national minimum wage because you've almost got a contradiction. It's a contradiction in terms. You may want a high figure of 20,000, but at the same time you'll wipe out a lot of jobs. Some may say it is this 3,500 is too high. If they say so, it basically means forever and in a day, the bulk of working people in South Africa will remain in wage poverty. Is that what we want?
A little bit earlier on Morning Live, Professor Imran Valodia, who is the chairperson of the advisory panel, explained the next step in the national minimum wage process.
One important point we're making in the proposal on this is that you want to have a 2-year adjustment period where you allowing firms to adjust to this new regime. And in those 2 years, we're saying that the enforcement shouldn't be to sort of penalize those who don't do it, but rather to provide the capacity for them to be able to make the adjustment.
Yeah, let's just take a look at what you guys are saying with regards to the minimum wage. Of course, we've been running a poll for the last couple of hours and we're asking you about the new minimum wage. Is it enough? Is 3,500 Rand enough? 20 Rand an hour. Can you feed the family on that? 23% say yes, you can. 77% of 153 votes say no, you cannot. It's not enough. You can't live on it. It's a discussion that you can follow on this very channel over the next few hours, next few days, well into the rest of the week. Of course, political parties will respond to the announcement made by Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa yesterday. Now, we move on. Students at the Tshwane University of Technology in Pretoria are expected to begin their exams at the city's event centre today. It comes after weeks of delays caused by fees must fall protests. Now, some student groups say they're opposed to the start of exams and will prevent students from boarding buses to the exam centre. Security has been tightened in anticipation of possible disruptions.
Following some violent fees must fall protests at Soshanguve, management resorted to having a central examination venue for TUT Soshanguve students as well as those on the main campus.
We have arranged additional transport for the students to and from Soshanguve, and there's extra security in place. We will check the personalised timetables, and they must prove that they have that, and also produce their student cards before they will be allowed onto the buses. And they will once again be checked when they arrive at the Tshwane Event Centre to ensure that only registered students who are supposed to write exams are permitted on the premises.
Student leader Thabo Buima was among those suspended during the fees must fall protests. He says exams should not continue, claiming that some within the student community are not ready.
The students are saying they are not ready to write because the protest disturbed them and they were not given a lot of time. Predicate ended on Friday, and yet they are told that on Monday you are going to write. This thing is even contradicting the policy of the institution.
Students are divided on the issue.
I'm happy to write because that's what I wanted for a long time ago. I am not happy because even when we come from library, the bouncers shoot for no reason.
Police continue to keep a close eye on both the Soshanguve and Garankuwa campuses. Security has also been beefed up at the Pretoria campuses. Offense Timo, SABC News, Pretoria.
Northwest Premier Supra Mahumapelo has sent his condolences to the family of 4 people who died when a cruise boat on the Hartepeespoort Dam near Brits caught fire on Saturday. At least 200 passengers are believed to have been on the boat. The fire department has joined the South African Maritime Safety Authority in investigating the fire that apparently started in the kitchen of this cruise boat.
It's gone too soon.
Recalling the last time she saw her mother alive, not knowing that these precious moments would be their last.
Yesterday, I did her makeup, I ironed her clothes, I helped her get dressed, I took her to the salon to do her hair, I did everything with her. Oh God. I love my mom, yo.
Mulapi, affectionately known as Nomsambata, drowned during the tragedy. The mother of 3 has been described as a woman who lived for her children.
Yo, my mom was my best friend. She was always there for me. We spoke about everything. She always supported me in everything I did, even though she'd be against it, but she was always there for me and my sister and my brother. Everything she did was for us. Yo, God.
Alongside her colleague and best friend, Portia Gumete, who's believed to have organized the trip. A group of Tiger Brands employees enjoying their year-end function.
These cruise people have not even come here, and the sun is setting again. They should be responsible to tell us what happened. We are even hearing different stories from her colleagues. I don't know when they are planning to come here and explain to us.
Northwest Premier Supra Mahumapelo has urged authorities to speed up the investigation into the cause of the tragedy. Mahumapelo also thanked emergency teams and members of the public for their swift response. Mahlako Komane, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Now, with the festive season fast approaching, the likelihood of an increase in robberies are worrying for the men in blue. South African police have urged the public to be vigilant and continue sharing information.
An all too familiar trend. Festive season crimes on the increase. Criminals are at their peak, but the police have declared war.
We know that the criminals, they are in advance, they are planning as well. While planning like that, they must know that we are on their feet. Before, even after, we will be on their feet, they will be arrested.
Police have had their hands full since Friday. In Jeppestown, 2 people were shot dead by an unknown group of men. On Saturday, in the south of Johannesburg, a man on his way to a church function was shot dead during a botched hijacking. 2 of the suspects succumbed to their injuries after a shootout with police, which left 1 policeman in a critical condition. A few hours later, a hijacking which saw 4 suspects arrested in Mill Park following a high-speed chase by the Tactical Response Unit. The suspects were transported to hospital under police guard after losing control of the stolen vehicle. More than 20 illegal firearms were seized in Johannesburg this weekend. Police also confiscated bulletproof vests, over 300 rounds of ammunition and explosives, including electronic detonators.
Community, because our community are the ones who are giving us this information. Without them, we cannot win. And we are calling for them to stick on and keep on using these numbers which you know, and they call the police so that we can really act very quickly.
In 2015, over 1,500 cars were jacked between November and January in Gauteng, and over 2,000 cases of housebreaking were reported over that period. Lopang Alamu, SABC News in Johannesburg.
You're watching Newsroom. We're counting down to the half hour. At around 10:40, of course, we'll get a sports update. But before that, we'll be talking about, well, the kind of situation or worsening situation, as some would call it, in the Central African Republic. Don't go away.
The proceedings of the Fees Commission has once again been disrupted.
We as a university do not feel that fee-free higher education currently is feasible.
It's the Mickey Mouse Commission. During in the commission, student grievances, we're not a part of the commission in the program. So that is why we tend to disturb the program.
If you tell me that I can't leave, then you are keeping me hostage.
Some students demanded that UCT lift the suspensions and expulsions of certain students.
It was bound to be an interesting debate with Donald and Hillary, him not even having bothered to prepare. So he was flying on instinct. And it didn't come across quite well. I'm starting a hashtag, medical fees must fall. There are many students who are protesting who are not necessarily violent. The students are saying the issue is how to implement, whereas the Commission's mandate is to look at feasibility.
Yeah. Among these countries, only South Africa allows same-sex marriages. Very concerning indeed, Prof.
Your sexual orientation does not demean your own humanity, doesn't make you less of a human being. That really is the essence.
Welcome back. Médecins Sans Frontières is cautioning the international community against a premature disengagement or deprioritization of the Central African Republic on the pretext that the country is now normal and stable following the general elections there 6 months ago. Now, contrary to the reports of normalization of the situation in the CAR, MSF staff over there, they witness a very different reality. Large numbers of people are still prisoners of violence and fear, with no access to housing, food, water, sanitation, healthcare, or even protection. To talk to us a little bit about this, in studio we are joined by Augustine Majiku, who is a field worker for Médecins Sans Frontières in the Central African Republic. Augustine, very good morning to you.
Morning, sir.
Just why now is it important for the international community to continue focusing on the CAR?
Actually, it's not that they want to continue focusing on CAR. They've been there for a long time because CAR has been in a civil war for a decade now. So following the election that happened 6 months ago, the international community, international donors, they want to pull out. They're considering pulling out of the Central African Republic. And as you said it, Doctors Without Borders, Médecins Sans Frontières, is saying that it's too early to consider pulling out because the government has been there for 6 months. We don't think that in 6 months things can change on the ground. And we are on the ground in the Central African Republic.
You tell us you're on the ground. What is it like for people to be living there? What's the humanitarian situation? What's the security situation for civilians?
Yes, we still have people who are living in fear of violence. We still have people who need health care. We are there on the ground. We have 17 projects in the whole country. We are providing health care to population in need. And we see what is going on. That's why we're saying it's too early to consider pulling out of that country.
What are the biggest challenges for people living in the CAR today?
The most challenging thing we think is the access to health care, to water, to sanitation, to food, even to housing.
Now, about 400,000 people are internally displaced. Another 500,000 have sought refuge in neighboring countries. This is a massive crisis. Talk to us about what's happening there and how it's affecting the surrounding area.
Yes, you have many people who have moved from Bangui, the capital city. They went into deep in provinces to hide, to run away from the violence. Other people, they ran away from the country. They went into surrounding countries, neighboring countries to find safety. So others, they run away in province where they have no habitation, nowhere to live. They need humanitarian to come and provide them food, sanitation, and to provide health care. So at this moment, we don't think it's time for international donors to pull out of that country yet.
Would you call the country right now, would you call it dysfunctional?
Actually, Doctors Without Borders is a humanitarian organization that provides care to population in needs, irrespective of their race, their political background. So I don't think I'm in a position to answer that question.
Okay. What would you then? What would be the information that you'd come to share with us then?
I would like to call upon the international donors, to our donors, that CAR is still in need of your donation. CAR is still in need of those organizations to stay in the country. The country is not yet ready for the donors to pull out. The population is still in need of health care.
How is the country? How is the country or financing its own healthcare for citizens right now, or is that completely non-existent?
We saw that the Ministry of Health, they put aside $6 million US dollars for the health care and for malnutrition in the country. Different from what MSF spent last year, 55 million euro to take care of all the population in our 17 projects in the country, which is very different from what the Ministry of Health is taking.
So you say the picture that we are getting on the outside is a little bit different. So what is your message then to international aid agencies, to governments and the like that's watching this broadcast right now?
We are calling up to international community, international donors, that the country still needs of humanitarian aid. So it's not time for us to pull out of that country.
Augustine, thank you very much for joining us. That's Augustine Majiku from Medicine Frontier. He's a field worker in the Central African Republic, where, of course, we've had civil war for the last 10 years. And he says, well, it's not dysfunctional, but it certainly needs a little bit of your help.
International watchdog Human Rights Watch has warned of chaos in the Democratic Republic of Congo should President Joseph Kabila insist to stay in power beyond his term. Now, the watchdog has urged the United Nations Organization Stabilization Mission in the DRC to deploy greater numbers of peacekeepers to areas where political violence might break out. Now, for more on the situation in the DRC, we're joined in studio by Ida Sawyer, who is a senior Human Rights Watch researcher in the DRC. A very good morning to you, Ida, and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you.
You were in the DRC not so long ago. Tell us about that.
So we're in a really tense period in the Democratic Republic of Congo in the lead up to this December 19th deadline when, according to the Constitution, President Joseph Kabila should step down at the end of his constitutionally mandated two-term limit. But over the past 2 years, we've seen this growing coalition of voices calling for Kabila to step down, to respect the Constitution. But instead, authorities have deliberately stalled plans for the organization of elections, and they've carried out this brutal crackdown on opposition leaders, activists, and protesters over the past 2 years.
So what is the current situation in the DRC?
So in the DRC right now, there have been numerous protests against these election delays and calls for Kabila to step down at the end of his mandate. Scores of opposition leaders and activists have been arrested, many of them held illegally in secret detention by the intelligence agencies, others put on trial on trumped-up charges. And then we've had these brutal crackdowns on demonstrations. Most recently, the week of September 19th, security forces fired on protesters. At least 56 people were killed by the security forces. They also attacked opposition party headquarters, burned them down. Some people were burned to death in these opposition party headquarters. A number of journalists arrested. And we've seen that was just the latest blow up of this brutal repression of the demonstrations. And we're now leading to November 19th, which is 1 month before December 19th. Opposition have again called for more demonstrations. It's possible we could see another crackdown then.
Is there an indication that President Kabila wants to stay in power and that he wants to cling on to power?
So President Kabila has repeatedly refused to declare publicly if and when he will step down. According to the Constitution, he has a two-term limit. He should be stepping down. Elections haven't been organized. They called for this national dialogue, which most of the main opposition leaders refused to participate in. But at the end of this dialogue, those who signed on, the final agreement said that elections should be held in April 2018, but there was no specific polling date, and there were a number of risks that were listed that could delay elections even further. So it's still not clear to the population if and when Kabila will step down.
Now, the DRC is a vast country with immense economic resources, until recently has been at the center of what some observers call Africa's world war. Is that really the case that we see, and is it because of his extension of his term that Kabila wants?
Well, we've seen Congo has had a very violent history for over 2 decades now, and that's even before Kabila came to power. There was the war years. 6 million people are estimated to have died in Congo since 1998. In eastern Congo, there are still dozens of armed groups that are active and continue to carry out attacks on civilians. So the situation is still very volatile in many parts of the country, and this political crisis could just escalate the tensions and violence even further.
Now, we also understand that the Human Rights Watch sent a letter to the United Nations urging it to urge Kabila rather to step down and to withdraw his mandate before the end of December. What was the UN's response in this regard?
So the UN Security Council actually just visited Congo last weekend. and they went to Kinshasa and to Eastern Congo, and they met with President Kabila, and they were hoping to get assurances from him that he would indeed step down and make a commitment that he will not try to change the constitution or run for a third term. But instead, when he was asked directly by members of the Security Council what his intentions were, Kabila responded by saying that the constitution currently has a two-term limit, but it could be amended. So he clearly did not give them the assurances they were hoping for.
Now, you have also called for urgent implementation of targeted sanctions against the intelligence and security officials as well as government officials responsible for violent repression and other serious violations in the country. Has that been implemented already or not as yet?
So the U.S. government has applied targeted sanctions against 3 senior Congolese security force officers since June of this year. But we do believe it's important for additional sanctions to be applied by the U.S. as well as the European Union and the United Nations against those most responsible for this brutal repression over the past 2 years, to show that there are real consequences for the repression, for the violence, and that the statements from the international community are not just declarations, but there are actions behind.
We also understand there's targeted attacks on journalists. Is that the case currently in the Congo?
Yes, so we've seen a number of arrests of both Congolese and international journalists in recent weeks and months in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And we've also seen Radio France International, RFI, which is the main international news outlet in Congo, has been blocked now in Kinshasa since November 5th.
Why is that the case? Why is journalists being targeted in this sense?
It seems that the authorities want to block access to information to the Congolese population. RFI and other international news outlets and some of the Congolese outlets, including Radio Okapi, are what the population rely on for getting independent, credible news about what's happening in their country. And this RFI was cut on November 5th, which is the day that the opposition was planning a big political meeting in Kinshasa. So it seems that the authorities wanted to stop RFI from providing information about this planned meeting.
You were also forced to leave the DRC.
I was.
Tell us about that.
So in August of this year, after having lived and worked in Congo for 9 years with Human Rights Watch, the authorities annulled my visa and then refused to renew it and gave me 48 hours to leave the country. And this was very disappointing for me personally, being forced to leave my home after so long. But it also, we saw that as a very clear part of this broader crackdown against independent observers and freedom of expression in Congo.
And the reasons given by the officials?
Officially, they did not give a reason, but we were told privately, and some government officials later said it had to do with our work documenting this political repression and calling for targeted sanctions against those most responsible.
Just briefly, because we're running out of time, what next now for the DRC and what should actually happen?
So we believe it's critical that the international community, so the EU, the US, but also regional leaders here in Africa, South Africa, the AU, SADC, really focus on this crisis in the Democratic Republic of Congo, try to find a consensus, a solution before December 19th, try to get President Kabila to make a commitment that he will step down in order to prevent large-scale protest, which could be followed by brutal repression and potentially violent spiraling out of control of the situation. So we hope that leaders will act now to prevent that from happening.
Ida, thank you so much for your time and joining us.
Thank you.
That was Human Rights Watch senior researcher Ida Sawyer.
Very interesting interview that Elvis was having there. Now, good morning to you. In terms of the sports, I'll be bringing it to you. The South African cricket team has complained about persistent media harassment from Australian news organisation Channel 9 News. This comes after an altercation between a Channel 9 reporter and the Proteas security team, as the team arrived at Adelaide Airport ahead of the third test against Australia. Captain Faf du Plessis has been charged with a code of conduct violation for allegedly tampering with a ball during the second test. The case is said to be heard soon. And until then, Cricket South Africa says they cannot comment any further. Faf du Plessis is really the centre of a ball tampering controversy, allegedly using a mint to doctor the match ball. The media focus is intense, but one organisation in particular, Channel 9 News, has been front and centre in pursuing the captain for comment. This has raised the ire of the Proteas and resulted in numerous altercations with reporters and security, most recently at Adelaide Airport today. With du Plessis receiving legal representation ahead of the hearing, scheduled for some time this week, the Proteas have appealed that Channel 9 News desist with what they see as disrespectful behaviour. After a long break, the ABSA Premiership is back in action. Danny Phiri's late second-half strike goal was enough to hand Golden Arrows a 1-0 win over Highlands Park at Makhulong Stadium in Tembisa. The win sees Arrows move to second on the log. That's 2 points behind league leaders Bidvest Wits for 19 points after 7 games.
Seventh on the table, Highlands Park hosted Golden Arrows on Sunday, looking to end their 6-game winless run. The last time the hosts registered a league win was 2 months ago against Baroka FC in their opening game of the season. While a win for Arrows would see them go second on the table, 2 points behind league leaders Bidvest Wits. The game got off to a subdued start with neither team managing to assert their dominance in the opening exchanges of the contest. With both teams struggling to find their rhythm going forward, Highlands Park resorted to set pieces. However, there was to be a late drama, Danny Phiri grabbing the game's only goal as Arrows walked away with maximum points. In the other Premier Soccer League fixture on Sunday, Bloemfontein Celtics took on Polokwane City at Dr. Petros Milemela Stadium. In contrast to a low-key first half between Highlands Park and Arrows in Tembisa, the first 45 minutes of play in Bloemfontein was action-packed. In the 27 minutes, Polokwane City were handed a good opportunity to open the scoring, referee penalizing a Celtic player for a handball in the 18-yard box. However, Celtic's goalkeeper was on hand to save his teammates' blushes. Both the teams picked up where they left off in the first stanza, pressing for the game's opener and ultimately the winner. However, in the end, the scoreline remained goalless. Joseph Mohale, SABC News.
So let's summarize quickly for you the weekend's results from all the way from the 19th to the 20th. We look, there were 14 goals scored through the 8 matches played over the weekend. And you know what? Those that follow the PSL know that it's not as bad as it's been and can get worse than that. Definitely happy for Mamelodi Sundowns beating Kaizer Chiefs 2-1. Their fans were really ecstatic about that. SuperSport United 1-0 draw against Baroka FC. 2-1 win for Cape Town City against Chipa United, who's struggled off late since they were told that they were playing very similar shoe-shine football to Mamelodi Sundowns. Orlando Pirates 1-0 against Free State Stars Maritzburg, a 2-1 win against Ajax Cape Town. Platinum Stars a 1-0 win over Bidvest Wits. That loss by Ajax Cape Town incidentally keeps them bottom of the log, which we'll get to just now. Yesterday, a 0-0 draw between Polokwane City and a 1-0 win for Golden Arrows, which Clinton Larson was ecstatic about. We'll now go through to the log standing, starting with the top 8. You'll see that Bidvest Wits remain top, having won 6 of their 7 matches so far, almost 4 points there. Golden Arrows and Cape Town City FC move upwards, having won 5 matches apiece and both on 17 points. SuperSport United, Kaizer Chiefs slipped downwards. Orlando Pirates and Polokwane, same position as the last time out. Maritzburg United moving into the top 8 on 10 points. We'll go through to the bottom half of the log. You'll see right at the bottom, you'll see Free State Stars and Ajax Cape Town. Ajax Cape Town doing what they seemingly are loath to do, but sitting and becoming bottom cellar dwellers. Baroka FC moving upwards, Chipa and Platinum Stars moving downwards on 9 points apiece, 6 points apiece for Celtic and Highlands Park, and then Mamelodi Sundowns moving upwards. They've now played 4 matches, 1-1 and drawn 2 on 5 points. Now, 5th seeds Henry Continent and John Pearce finished their debut season with a perfect ending on Sunday in London. The Finnish Australian pairing won the Barclays ATP World Tour Final doubles title, beating fellow first-timers South Africa's Raven Klaasen and American Rajiv Ram 2-6, 6-1 and 10-8. 7th seeds Klaasen and Ram were going for their biggest team title ever, and the South African and American started strong, but it really wasn't to be last night.
The team of Raven Klaasen and Rajiv Ram came into their first final at the Barclays ATP World Tour Finals, courtesy of a win against Jamie Murray and Bruno Suarez on Saturday night. In the final match, they faced Henry Continent and John Pearce, who also reached the final for the first time, thanks to their 7-6, 6-4 victory against the Bryan brothers, Bob and Mike. Klaasen and Ram broke twice in the first set and erased all 3 break points faced to breeze through the 30-minute opener. They won the point on the former serve and took the first set 6-2.
For John Peers again. Playing intelligently and playing very well indeed. Klaassen and Rammer halfway towards the biggest title of their careers.
Continent and Peers, however, seemed to be turning the match on its head in the second set.
Wow. Well, the first set that was dominated by this pair has been totally turbulent head.
They won the point on the finish's serve and went on to level the match to 1 set apiece.
The match tie-break is just around the corner. It's 1 set apiece.
The Finnish-Australian duo came out guns blazing in the third set. The Australian served for the biggest title of his career.
It's Peers and Continent's title in London. A remarkable autumn period for the Finn-Australian duo.
The win completed a strong first season for the pair. They have now acquired 43 match wins, including 4 ATP World Tour titles. The South African and the American had to settle for the runners-up prize. Mduduzi Ndlovu, SABC News.
Tough luck for Raven Klaassen and Rajiv Rem right there. In the next hour, we'll bring you the report of Andy Murray and how he won that straight shootout between himself and Novak Djokovic for world #1 ranking in the match that happened a little later. I'll also be chatting to Neville Godwin, who's Kevin Anderson's world-renowned coach. Now, talking about coaches, Springbok coach Alistair Coetzee is living on borrowed time. The Springboks has lost to Italy over the weekend. Is, according to many, the last straw, and the fat lady is singing her lungs out. Analyst Jody Hendricks had this to say.
Past 5 years in the Six Nations, they've not been higher than 5th on the log in the end of the Six Nations. So it shows you about the depth or the quality of South African rugby at the moment, which is really not up to standard. And
Clearly
we're
not.
talking about competing against the likes of New Zealand when we can't even compete against Italy, Kendall. It's really, it's poor, it's pathetic.
It's quite pathetic.
Yeah.
But now here's a question I've got for you. Is it really Alistair Coetzee, the coach? Is it the administrators? Is it the conditioning of the players? Who's really at fault for the current situation?
It's a combination of factors, and I think Alistair has to take a lot of the blame. Not all of the blame, but a lot of the blame. His love affair with certain players. You know, this team has not performed week in and week out, and he keeps selecting most of the guys. He says he wants to go for consistency. Consistency for what? Losing. You know, when you've got youngsters, if you want to talk about building a team, and this is really, you know, you've got to have a plan. The Rugby World Cup is 3 years away in Japan. Build with the youngsters. If you lose, you know, with the youngsters, then you can say it's justified. But these are guys that's experienced. It's his first choice players. It's not like he's giving guys an opportunity, and they are not performing. And so he has to take a lot of the blame. The fact that, you know, the conditioning of the players, we can say that New Zealand, Australia, they were all part of the Super Rugby tournament, their players as well. So, you know, a combination of factors, Alistair has to take a lot of the blame. We gave him grace in the series against Ireland. We gave him opportunities during the Rugby Championship, but now he's been in the job for 6-7 months. And if we can't beat a team like Italy, what does that really say about us? If we can't beat the Barbarians, whose team came together a week or a couple of days before the match against the Springboks, then, you know, Alistair is a great guy. He's a good coach. I think, unfortunately, the circumstances at the moment does not seem right for him, and he doesn't seem to have the answers. If he had the answers, you know, somebody told me it's a downward spiral, and Alistair doesn't know where the brake pedal is. So, you know, he has to take some of the blame because really, Kendall, Italy, that's the big thing. I'm still in shock that we lost to Italy out of all teams. I was shocked when we lost to Japan last year, but this performance yesterday was even worse. We were in the game for about 20 minutes. You know, scored 2 good tries by backline players, the Allender and by Banner. And then all of a sudden, for 60 minutes, I couldn't make out what exactly the game plan was. Was it forwards trying to dominate? Was it a number 10 trying to dominate? Was it a backline trying to run with the ball? I couldn't make sense, and I'm sure Alistair couldn't make sense as well. And that just leaves us with more answers than
more questions than answers.
Yeah, than before the game against Wales.
Right, now I had that chat with Jody Hendricks last night on this very studio. Very interesting comments there. We agreed on Alistair Coetzee having to hold the can for this one. Now, South Africa, interestingly enough, still 4th on the World Rugby rankings. This despite that embarrassing defeat against Italy on Saturday. Ireland could have overtaken the Springboks, but their 9-21 loss to New Zealand in Dublin, as well as other international results, mean the top four will remain the same, at least for this week. That's why we're going to leave it with the sport for this hour. In fact, that's why we'll leave it with the program for this hour. We'll be back in a few minutes' time, at the top of the hour, to bring you more news, more analysis. And you're watching Newsroom.
Whether you're looking for a restaurant, public transport or a university, a lot of us use our smartphone apps to find the closest one. On Network, we chat to those who play a role in Africa's tech space.
We have taken financial services closer to the people. Yeah, mobile penetration is pretty high.
Apple take 30%, keep 70%.
On Network, we give you Africa's social media and technology news. That's Network with Ms. Phumelele Zondi every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time.
Something called, what, threads or something? What is that?
Yes, so people, you know, with a bit of sagging, so you're in your mid-40s, not quite ready for surgery, not entirely happy with the way your jawline looks, it has a bit of a jolly look, so that's where threads come in. So it's a non-surgical procedure.
What causes acne?
Common causes of acne are genetics, can be hormonal as well, so that's why you see it normally in sort of your prepubescent or your pubescent teenagers. There can be social causes as well.
Varicose veins versus spider veins.
Those large, big, tortuous blood vessels that run down your legs, those are varicose veins. They're typically more than 3 to 5 millimeters in size. And then those very thin, fine, thready veins, and they can be a variety of colors, purple, blue, red. So those are the spider veins.
Join Health Talk every Saturday for all your health news. Did you know that Vilakazi Street is the only street in the world to have housed 2 Nobel Prize winners? Vilakazi Street in Orlando West, Soweto, southwest of Johannesburg in the Republic of South Africa, has been home to Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Nelson Mandela's house was a modest family house from 1946 and still maintains those features. Archbishop Desmond Tutu still owns his house in Vilakazi Street since 1975 and often goes to stay there when visiting Johannesburg. Because of its popularity, the street has an influx of tourists. Restaurants with local cuisine have mushroomed around it, creating job opportunities for the locals and improving the lifestyle in the area. Orlando West High School in Vilakazi Street is known for its creative role during the famous 1976 uprising.
Well, it is that time of the day, 11 o'clock here on this Monday, the 21st of November 2016. This is Newsroom, Jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome to the final hour. I'm Elvis Preston. I'll be with you until 12 o'clock. You have to stay with us as we broadcast live from our Auckland Park studios here in Johannesburg, South Africa, to the rest of the African continent. Now, we're focusing this morning on an issue that's very close to the heart of all South Africans, and that focuses on the 101 ANC veterans who will meet the African National Congress, their top 6 in the NWC today. The meeting stems from their concerns about the movement and calling on the ANC to hold early conference to elect a new leadership. Question of the day, we're asking you, the president is meeting the 101 ANC veterans today. What are your expectations rather? Let me know what's on your mind on the Facebook page as well as on the Twitter handle. But we're also conducting a poll on the proposed national minimum wage. We're asking the question, Is the proposed national minimum wage of 3,500 Rand enough? It's up here on your screen. You can still participate. 160 votes in thus far. 23% of you are saying, yes, it is enough. 77% are saying no to the no. It's not enough for our people. Well, it's an ongoing discussion. This is the first proposal. We want to see what comes out of that. But first, let's take a look at your news headlines. President Jacob Zuma has arrived in Irene in Pretoria for a meeting with 101 veterans of the ANC who have called on him to resign. And there's been mixed reaction to the minimum wage proposal of 3,500 Rand a month made by the NEDLAC advisory panel. And the Northwest Premier, Supremo Mapelo, has sent his condolences to the family of 4 people who died in a cruise boat on the Hartbeespoort Dam near Brits caught fire on Saturday. Now, those are all your headlines, but before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening in the final hour in the sports.
Elvis, thank you very much. We've actually got to the Monday after that very busy weekend, and quite a lot happened on the sporting front. Some people are in tears and some people are celebrating. And I'll tell you what, this is what we've got for you in the sports today.
The shift that our boys put in today was magnificent, and conditions weren't easy, but a magnificent shift from everybody.
Golden Arrows shoot to the second spot in the Absa Premiership after their 1-0 victory over Highlands Park.
Hazard's corner. Costa! Chelsea breakthrough 5 minutes before half-time.
Diego Costa nets a poacher's goal against Middlesbrough as Chelsea rocket to the top of the log after 6 consecutive Premier League victories.
The 2016 Barclays ATP World Tour Finals champion, Andy Murray.
And Andy Murray saves the best for last as he dispatches his nemesis Novak Djokovic to win the straight shootout for the year's end world #1 ranking in the ATP World Tour Final. All this and more I've got for you later on in the Sports Bulletin, but I'll also be chatting to Neville Godwin, tennis coach supreme. But for now, it is back to Elvis, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this hour. African National Congress President Jacob Zuma has arrived in Irene outside Pretoria for a meeting with 101 veterans of the ANC who have called on him to resign. Now, earlier this month, the veterans spoke out about their concerns about the declining state of the country, calling for the ANC to hold an early conference to elect a new leadership. Issues expected to be discussed today include the battles between the Hawks, the NPA, SARS and the Treasury. The former public protector's state of capture report will also be discussed, we understand.
Namhlanje bagqugquzela imhlangano ngaphandle kwezakhiwo ze-ANC. Bathi bona babaluleke kakhulu ukudlula laba base-distraction.
2 weeks after that statement, President Jacob Zuma is heeding the call to meet the ANC veterans.
The national officials of the ANC, top 6, are part of the working committee.
So, President,
the entire working committee is expected to be part of, to constitute the ANC delegation.
Former President Thabo Mbeki had also urged his successor in a letter not to ignore the veterans. The ANC 101, as they've become known, are unhappy with the party's state of affairs. They accuse the leadership of allowing certain individuals to trump the constitution.
We must do something and do it now, irrespective of the consequences.
The veterans want the ANC to go to a consultative conference, but this request could be a bit late as the ANC has already set its plans for 2017 ahead of the elective conference. This is the same message the party has made to COSATU affiliates like NEHAO and the CWU, who have called on the president to step aside.
We've agreed there is no early conference, so there's not even a talk about anything in between. We're preparing for the policy conference mid-year next year in June here in Gauteng. So it's all systems go for the national conference. If anybody wants to change the leadership of the ANC, participate internally in the ANC, influence that outcome, it can only happen in next year December, nothing between now and next year December.
At the meeting, the ANC could call on the veterans to urgently convene their own league conference as resolved by the NEC. Aldrin Simpier, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Now, the MKVA is aggrieved that the ANC has agreed to meet the 101 veterans today. Its leader, Kevin Mafatswe, made the comment in Johannesburg.
As the MKMVA prepares to celebrate its 55th anniversary, all eyes will be on Irene near Pretoria, where the ANC will meet some of its oldest cadres over their concerns about the party. But the MKMVA leader holds a different view.
You can't, when you see counter-revolution, comrades, come in, and then we still say, no, comrades, let's give them a hearing. We were not taught those politics as MK. Unfortunately, we disagree with our leadership here. This is our view that we think they were not supposed to be listened to.
Mapatswe defended President Jacob Zuma, saying the ANC leader is being targeted because he's trying to address the thorny issues of economic disparity and inequality in the country.
It is because he is now changing the game to say the freedom without economy, power, comrades, is useless. And that's where we must take our energy to, comrades, to fight the big white monopoly capital.
Preparations and nominations for the elective conference will start in earnest next year, and this is likely to generate hot debate within the ANC. Nhlanhla, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Now, earlier we spoke to political analyst Dumisani Shlope and Samador Fikeni, a visiting professor at UNISA, on the ANC meeting the 101 ANC veterans today.
It's a good decision, but I think over time there could have been a better engagement. I think part of the challenges of the ANC is that when it comes to elective conferences, the victorious group has a tendency to discard those that they defeated and render them useless in the utility of the movement. So they are very brilliant and experienced stalwarts within the ANC that you know, are just loitering out there, and yet they could be used very, very effectively for the organization. So it's brilliant. Unfortunately, it comes in the context of tensions in an environment of toxic politics. And so it is going to be us versus them. So it's not going to be an extremely useful initiative. But I think what would be more useful is what they decide to do after this in terms of ongoing engagement.
Now, the 101 veterans did indicate that they've tried at various times to engage with the president and the top six to talk to them, but that failed. Now they're meeting today, but there are some within the movement that is feeling not so kosher about this. MKVA veteran leader, yes. Kevin Mapatswe, says that he's not very happy about this. And what can we read from that?
Well, I think it's a question of leadership. Does the ANC have a leadership that has the ability to collapse all its different formation into one single driving entity? So perhaps that has not happened. This is why you find that the ANC Youth League will pronounce on something differently from what the MK Veteran does, and alternatively from what the ANC Women's League does. So it's not so much what the different parts are saying, but the inability of the center to hold all of these formations within the ANC to speak with one voice on similar issues.
We also have Professor Samador Fikeni. You got him on the other end there.
Yeah, let's bring in Dr. Fikeni. Very good morning to you, Dr. Fikeni, in our Pretoria studios. You saw the pronouncements made by the president, of course, talking about this meeting being organized in the wrong way outside of the structures. How do you view this? How do you see this relationship between the veterans and the president, but also the ANC top six? How do you see this right now?
Well, I do think that it is at its lowest at this stage because the president feels like he's a victim and is quite bitter about some of the pronouncements. And this you could sense from his speeches in the rural areas of KwaZulu-Natal and in Pietermaritzburg. So at this moment, I do think that it will be left to some of the leaders who are not at the center to bring together the two contending parties, because if it is left to them, I don't think there will be a common ground.
Within that the context that you're talking about right now, then, today's meeting, what do you expect of it? Or do you see it as doomed before it even started by the sounds of it?
I don't necessarily think it's doomed. That it's even taking place is quite an achievement, because you do have people within the ANC and people within the veterans who feel very strongly that they would not want to see ANC go down on a spiral route as it is now, given its internal factional battles, given the fact how it has managed the issue of Nkandla, how it has managed the issue of state capture, and how it is managing even the losses in the local government elections. So to that extent, you may have a strong push for further consultation, a commitment on the protocols of engagement, and even a possibility of a consultative conference similar to the one you saw in Morogoro and in Kabwe when the ANC was in exile.
Now, on Saturday, the president took another veiled swipe at the party's veterans for going about the wrong way and raising their concerns about the ANC leadership outside its structures. Now, what impact will this statement now have on this particular meeting, Mr. Shlope?
Well, it's very interesting because the bigger context are just the following. The middle class in this country, the mainstream media, have decided to criticize the ANC or President Zuma, not the ANC, President Zuma, from using press conferences, using the mainstream media. And the same applies to the veterans, to the stalwarts. They've equally used the same platform. Now, President Zuma, in his Fight Back campaign, as Professor Somadoda Fikene said, is using the rural areas, particularly the grassroots, to transmit his message. And his Fighting Back message says that, look, there's just a whole range of regime change out there that want to get rid of the ANC, and they are using even some of our people. So it's what we've been seeing in the last few days in the rural KZN has actually been a fight back, so to speak. So this is why this meeting, for example, that we're talking about today is going to be a very hostile meeting. But I expect the president and the NWC to come out a bit more advantageous because they spend lots of time together. They speak with one voice, you know, at least by overwhelming majority, as against the veterans who are essentially a loose coalition. And I don't think they've got a center of power, a central theme that they want to push, except two major themes that either the president steps down, but they need ways to refocus the ANC. So the battle lines are drawn.
Mm-hmm. If I can bring in Dr. Fikene once again, I want to talk quickly about this, the calls that were made by the veterans earlier in the month. Of course, one of the cornerstone of those calls was an early elective conference. Do you see this part of a kind of trade agreement, or do you think 2017 has been planned by the ANC and they kind of set on that plan?
Well, I do think that they are generally set on that plan because those who are calling for an early election are often suspected of trying an early regime change or achieving the removal of President Jacob Zuma by other means. But at the same time, you also have a very simple logistical challenge. Even if ANC wanted to have an early elective and policy conference, after such bruising elections, which were quite expensive, they may not be able to raise funds, but also they may not be able to energize and get their branches ready, given the state of the branches, the state of the regions, which takes some time to even resolve their issues. So it might take exactly more or less the same time to prepare for the December conference of next year. What they may then press for is a consultative conference, because that may even play a role in trying to nullify or even neutralize some of the most brutal factional battles for leadership, which nullify the other faction when they are looking for a leader. So to that extent, ANC might have learned from Polokwane and Mangaung that it is shrinking each time a pure faction rise and it begin to nullify even people with experience.
Kenny, as well as Dumisani Shlope, a political analyst, giving us their take on the situation today at Irene, where that will be discussed with the 101 ANC veterans. We'll keep you updated on that. This is your favorite channel, Channel 404. This is where you're going to get it first. Now let's take a look at some of your comments. This one from Gibson says, they must reconcile and close this matter and move on to important stuff, says Gibson. This one from El Señor Leon says the president is taking a great path to face with veterans as they are not clear about their intentions and they are unreasonable. My ANC, so says El Señor Leon. This one from Kamesile says, I expect them to embrace the Freedom Charter and reject the perpetuation of the colonial economy under Oppenheimer and Rupert. Well, these are some of your comments coming through. You can keep them coming right here on the Facebook page as well as on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom. We'll read them as we continue today. Now, the situation at the campuses in Soshanguve north of Pretoria remains tense after students vowed not to sit for their exams. Now, they are scheduled to start today, and the management is adamant that they will proceed as scheduled. Several buses under police and security escort have transported students from the Tshwane University of Technology, Soshanguve campus, to the Tshwane Event Center in Pretoria, where they'll write their exams. Police earlier fired rubber bullets to disperse groups of students boycotting the exams.
Following some violent fees must fall protests at Soshanguve, management resorted to having a central examination venue for TUT Soshanguve students as well as those on the main campus.
We have arranged additional transport for the students to and from Soshanguve, and there's extra security in place. We will check the personalized timetables, and they must prove that they have that and also produce their student cards before they will be allowed onto the buses. And they will once again be checked when they arrive at the Tshwane Event Centre to ensure that only registered students who are supposed to write exams are permitted on the premises.
Student leader Thabo Buima was among those suspended during the fees must fall protests. He says exams should not continue, claiming that some within the student community are not ready.
The students are saying they are not ready to write because the protest disturbed them and they were not given a lot of time. Predicate ended on Friday, and yet they are told that on Monday you are going to write. This thing is even contradicting the policy of the institution.
Students are divided on the issue.
I'm happy to write because that's what I wanted for a long time ago.
I am not happy because even when you come from library, the bouncers shoot for no reason.
Police continue to keep a close eye on both the Soshanguve and Ga-Rankuwa campuses. Security has also been beefed up at the Pretoria campuses. Offense Estimo, SABC News, Pretoria.
The proposed 3,500 Rand minimum wage has been slammed by various parties. The minimum wage, first proposed by the Workers' Union to be 4,500 Rand, but business wanted 1,500. Meanwhile, Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa says this is a step closer to reaching agreement and it paves the way for a meaningful discussion with its social partners.
Minimum wage intended to set a benchmark for employers to pay a living wage. But this proposal has been slammed as too little and does nothing to alleviate the plight of the workers. Deputy President says while discussions are still ongoing, this is a step closer to finding a common ground.
We are now a step closer to finalizing our discussions on the national minimum wage if we finally reach agreement. Now, clearly, all the social partners will have to decide precisely what their take is on these recommendations from the panel of advisors. Just so that there is clarity on this, it is a proposal. It still has to be discussed. It still has to be engaged with. And what, in the typical South African fashion, we are going
to want to do is to get the South African public to discuss this matter.
The reason is just to strengthen the collective bargaining. And those who will be earning more than the figure that will be agreed upon after the Committee of Principals have finalized the discussions won't be affected, because we are not going to allow those minimum wages that are being paid based on the collective agreements. So they will remain there.
But different sectors are not pleased. They say it does nothing to deal with the plight of the workers.
What was quite significant about the report was the way that the panel of experts dealt with the myth of massive job losses that could occur. Because there was at one stage a situation that said, if we make the minimum wages 3,500 rand, then there will be job losses of 715,000 jobs.
We reject this as a serious joke, and we call on all the workers in South Africa to reject it as well. It is based on figures that were concocted, but also figures that are based on last year. When the workers made a proposal of 4,500, it was 2 years ago. And business made a counter proposal of 2,700 when the workers said 4,500. If you take into consideration that inflation has moved in the last 2 years by more than 6%, it means the 3,500 is actually the proposal that business wanted. So we must reject it. Any national minimum wage that is going to be below 4,500 will not make any changes.
Nedlex says their decision was reached based on the economic climate in the country.
It's quite striking that that something around 47% of South Africans who do have work, who do sort of go to work every day, earn a wage below 3,500.
Business Chamber Nefcock says it's not enough to combat poverty and inequality, while the ANC has welcomed the proposal but called for a further engagement between stakeholders. Nhlanhla Gatlane, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Northwest Premier Supremo Mapelo has sent his condolences to the family of 4 people who died when a cruise boat on the Hartbeespoort Dam near Brits caught fire on Saturday. At least 200 passengers are believed to have been on the boat. The fire department has joined the South African Maritime Safety Authority in investigating the fire that started in the kitchen of the cruise boat.
It's gone too soon.
Recalling the last time she saw her mother alive, not knowing that these precious moments would be their last.
Yesterday, I did her makeup, I ironed her clothes, I helped her get dressed, I took her to the salon to do her hair, I did everything with her. Oh God. I love my mom, yo.
Mulapi, affectionately known as Nomsambata, drowned during the tragedy. The mother of 3 has been described as a woman who lived for her children.
Yo, my mom was my best friend. She was always there for me. We spoke about everything. She always supported me in everything I did, even though she'd be against it, but she was always there for me and my sister and my brother. Everything she did was for us.
Alongside her colleague and best friend, Portia Gumete, who's believed to have organized the trip. Part of a group of Tiger Brands employees enjoying their year-end function.
These cruise people have not even come here, and the sun is setting again. They should be responsible to tell us what happened. We are even hearing different stories from her colleagues. I don't know when they are planning to come here and explain to us.
Northwest Premier Supra Mahoma-Pelu has urged authorities to speed up the investigation into the cause of the tragedy. Mahoma-Pelu also thanked emergency teams and members of the public for their swift response. Mahlako Komane, SABC News, Johannesburg.
An incomplete bridge in Sebokeng, south of Johannesburg, has resulted in tragedy and loss to the local community. What's worse is that since this tragic drowning about a year ago, this bridge still hasn't been completed. Our SABC reporter Mahaketla Moshlabe and camera person Kena Mobina traveled to the area and sent this report.
It began as an ambitious project, a new road and bridge for residents in Everton and Sebokeng. Later, it was abandoned by the contractor. Now, there is a massive hole without warning signs. This is where 12-year-old Loiso Mkoteni drowned. Claudia Molapo was the first on the scene.
I saw that little boy lying faces that direction. And that's when he phoned Maponesa, shaking, angry and bitter.
The grade 5 learner had gone to play when he fell into the stream. The family blames the municipality.
Had they covered this or put visible warning signs, our child would have never died that way.
But it's still not cordoned off, and children are seen scrambling across. Residents have complained in vain.
We set a meeting and sit down and talk about this bridge until we reach an agreement that the road contract will start on the 1st of August 2016. That means this year.
That hasn't happened.
There was a contractor that was initially appointed that has to be removed from the site due to other reasons, citing to delays on completion of that road. And when they demolished that, it was to put another bridge which is bigger than what was already there and existed. But because of the delays and the poor performance of the contractor, we had to terminate the contract.
Do you admit that you failed the community?
Yes, the community has suffered its effect, we know.
And no one has suffered more than the Mkoteni household, for there will always be a bridge and troubled waters. Mahaketla Moshlabe, SABC News, Sebokeng in the south of Gauteng.
I don't know if I'm going to succeed, but I want you to tell us, who are these 3 people that you have opened corruption charges against at the Brooklyn police station? How senior are they?
Very.
Are these people who are serving in the political office of the executive mayor?
Yes.
Which means they are no longer working for the city now.
Well, I can tell you that one of them is actually finding themselves employed in another municipality.
You are not going to tell us the names?
No, you're not going to get names from me.
Are people still getting free Wi-Fi in Tshwane?
People are still getting free Wi-Fi, and we will actually make it one of the basic services that our residents will get.
Now here's a good news story. City Power has heeded the call from the National Treasury to contribute into improving work experience skills for many of the unemployed youth across the country by employing electrical engineering students with the end goal of producing certified engineers over the next 3 years. City Power is making a concerted effort to professionalize the engineering field in the country. The utility has partnered with the Engineering Council of South Africa, EXA, on a special joint initiative known as the Road to Recruitment. Now, for more on the story in our studios, we are joined by Tsifilaro Mosocha, City Power's Director for Human Resource. Tsifilaro, very good morning to you and welcome.
Morning, thank you.
First and foremost, now engineering remains a very scarce skill really across the country. How is this initiative by City Power going to perhaps help and empower young people?
Okay.
It is indeed a scarce because we do not have enough numbers as a country in terms of engineering. So what this does, it opens up possibilities. It gives our young people work experience so that at the end of the day, in terms of their career, possibilities are limitless.
When people hear the word engineer, they automatically think universities. But so where are you sourcing these young people from?
We are not just looking at the BEng, the degree students, but we are also looking at the national diploma as well as the BTech students as well.
Why is that?
Because you don't just need the engineers, you also need the technologists, you also need the technicians, and it's different skill sets.
Now, when did the initiative start, and how many young people have you empowered thus far?
Okay, we started about a year ago because we needed to have the right engagements with all the role players, EXA, and National Treasury, and we've recruited, so we've got on board a total of about 28 young people.
28?
Yes.
And how are they doing?
We're at startup phase now, so it's only just going to be the induction and the onboarding now, and the actual program is going to start off next year. But there's a lot of excitement. They're looking forward to all this.
In the end, how many people would you like to empower?
Look, it would be good if we had taken over 100 already this year, given the fact that we need the technical skills. But it's a journey, and it's one that we've started now, and we intend to increase the numbers as we go.
Now, you've partnered with EXA, the Engineering Council of South Africa. How important is that partnership for you?
That's very important because you need to have that to be a professional, to be accredited, to be recognized in terms of your qualification. So it brings that element of professionalism, that element of recognition to it.
Now, how are you funding this particular initiative? Does it only come out of your budget as City Power, or how do you do it?
There's a fund that has been made available by the National Treasury. So it actually goes towards their salaries, and it also goes towards the mentors that we have to bring on board. So it's not just City Power, it's also the National Treasury funds available. Yes.
How many mentors will you have for these 28 students that you got on board right now?
It's important that when you enter the work environment, you've got mentors that look at various things. So they won't just have a single mentor. So it's possible that you may find yourself with 2 or 3 just to take care of all areas.
Let's go back to the source that you, from the youngsters that you're getting from all over the country. What sort of criteria are you using to identify them?
Okay, so obviously you have to have a qualification, and we should have vetted the qualification. So if you've got the national diploma or the BTech, we should be sure that it comes from an accredited institution. And thereafter, in terms of our assessment, we actually had to take them through some form of competency assessment where they had to write, and we had to assess if they actually have what it takes to enter the workplace.
So it's a process, it's not just jump in and get the job.
It cannot be, because we need the very best. I think especially because we have limited numbers. If you're doing this for the country, you need to be convinced that it will carry the right impact. So we are really sourcing the very best.
Now here's a tough one, because we know there's a perception that maths and science is a very difficult subject to study, and there's also reluctance by some schools, we believe, to take students through the mathematical process and let them study this. So this has led also to a shortage of students studying mathematics in university. So how do you deal with that now, and even in colleges for that matter?
Okay. City Power is an organization. We do provide bursaries. So that makes it a bit better in terms of, I'm not just doing maths and science in high school, it ends there. Somebody's going to offer me that support when I go to tertiary institution. And that actually helps, because as their bases, there's that relationship with them that we work with them to ensure that they're able to deal with their subjects. So maths and science is a prerequisite if you're entering the engineering world. But maths and science is not that difficult. It's just different.
How is this initiative going to help City Power improve your services to residents and, of course, service delivery?
City Power, we are all about now building high-performance teams. Now, high-performance teams goes with professionalism, it goes with capability, with competence, with skills. So this program is actually assisting us in terms of building that technical depth that we require, so that we can then improve our service delivery. We want to be able to service our customers 24/7. You need a pipeline of skills for you to be able to do that.
Masocha, thank you so much for your time and joining us here in studio. And good luck with the project. It sounds like a wonderful initiative. Are you going to duplicate that across, perhaps, well, I know you're only in the city of Johannesburg, but across to other cities as well, perhaps?
No, definitely. The good thing is the program is already rolling, and we are also as City Power encouraging other utilities to also, you know, carry on with it.
Yes.
Yes.
That was Chifilaro Masocha, City Power's Director for Human Resource, telling you about the good news for you out there that want to become an engineer or even just a technician. You can join a very dedicated group to look after the city and their power. We'll take a break right now and we'll come back right after that.
Information-hungry viewers stay with SABC News, as issues on the West are different from issues on the East or here in Johannesburg. So it is not surprising that people who follow the news know that there are two things for sure: that anything can happen, and SABC News will tell you when it does. Because we keep the nation fully informed. We are SABC News.
Police found powerful military explosives when they swooped on a house in Springs on the Gauteng.
Some of the weapons seized at this house included rocket-propelled grenades, rifles, and even rounds of ammunition.
All military explosives that we found that you cannot obtain a commission.
The weapons found at the house not only had the potential to cause major damage to property, but they also put many lives at risk.
I could have lost any one of my family members, or most of my family members.
And a hearty good morning to you. It's Monday morning, and as promised, I bring you that report on how Great Britain's Andy Murray beat five-time champion Novak Djokovic to win his first ATP World Tour Finals title in London. With the year-end top-ranking on the line, Murray won the much-anticipated final 6-3, 6-4 to secure a spot at the top of the world rankings.
That he's not going to let go of that #1 ranking very easily.
Murray, who twice broke the record this week for the longest match played at the O2 Arena, arrived in the final with an extra 3 hours of court time in his legs. As for the Serb, this was a huge event for him, not only because of the opportunity to reclaim the world #1 ranking, but because he had won it for the past 4 years.
What is outstanding is to be able to win when you're not playing your best.
Both players found a strong early rhythm on serve. But when the ball started to spend more time in play, there were signs that Djokovic was short of his usual poise.
It's a lovely response, and that's what's so important for Murray.
Djokovic, however, prides himself on not going quietly. But he was up against a man on a 23-match winning streak and eager to continue with his good run. Murray was pushing for that decisive ace he so desperately wanted, but in vain. Djokovic's return, however, made life easy for Murray as it skewed long and wide, and the season was done.
Murray wins! 2 sets to love, 6-3, 6-4. Murray wins it all!
The script could not have been written more perfectly. This was the first time that two players had reached their last match of the year with the #1 ranking on the line.
I mean, obviously, very special day. You know, playing against Novak in a match like this, it's been a tough rivalry. I've lost many of them. Obviously, happy I managed to get the win today, and to finish the year #1 is very special. This is something I never expected.
He deserved to win. He just played a better tennis, and in the decisive moments, I wasn't able to to come back. I started playing a bit better towards the end of the match, but it was a bit too late. And I congratulate him and his team for a tremendous year.
Djokovic came into the grass court season holding all 4 Grand Slam titles. But it was Murray who ended the season on a high, and deservedly so. Mduduzi Ndlovu, SABC News.
And so talking to us after an enthralling installment of the ATP World Tour Finals is Neville Godwin, world-renowned tennis coach who also takes charge of Kevin Anderson's tennis preparations for all of his matches and tourneys. Thank you very much for coming through, Neville.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Neville, this particular installment of the ATP World Tour Finals could not have been scripted even better. It was really exciting from start to finish.
Well, I think they had everything that they ever could have dreamed of. You had Andy Murray coming in, just having to replace Novak Djokovic as #1. They ending up playing each other in the final, and the winner basically being the #1, going to end up with the #1 ranking for the year, which is a huge deal for these guys. And it was very much a story of two parts this year. Novak was so incredibly dominant in the first 6 months, and eventually getting to his peak, which was winning the Roland Garros title, which he's been striving for so long, and then kind of just falling away a little bit. I think he got a little bit tired, and he's hinted to that many times already in all of his press conferences. And then you have Andy, who's just been absolutely amazing in the last half, the second half of the season, and he's caught up something like 9,000 points to actually go and take that #1 ranking.
And he did it. I mean, 23 straight wins. But Murray has always been a little bit of an enigma because he's always going left field in terms of his coaching choices, in terms of the number of people in his coaching staff and so on. Because I think he's been, some people have commented that he's got so many people on his team and stuff. But what in your mind has given Andy Murray the edge this year?
Well, I think he's got someone who's full-time with him, who's Jamie Delgado, who's full-time with him, and he does 40-plus weeks a year with him. And then he just sort of chops and changes and gets a little bit more input. He's obviously gone back and very well documented that he worked with Ivan Lendl through Queens and Wimbledon. And Ivan Lendl he probably only does 8 to 10 weeks a year with him, but just gives him a little bit of input here and there. The rest of the team, he's got Matt Little, who's a fantastic fitness trainer, has been with him for a long time, knows his body very well. He's got Mark Bender, one of the best physiotherapists in London, who works with him for most of the time. And he's got another physiotherapist that helps out when Mark is not able to travel. So, yes, he has a big team, but so many of these players these days have teams that they have to trust, and they trust so much of their body to these guys.
Let's talk a little bit about Raven Klaasen. Raven Klaasen, the South African who made good. He's in his mid-30s. He's playing the best tennis of his life, and he's been quite a revelation for a lot of people that weren't following doubles tennis before this year.
Well, I think, I have so much respect for Raven and as to what he's done. He had a very bad injury when he was about 26 years old, came back, really worked hard, tried to get back into the singles court, just wasn't able to, switched over to the doubles, and just been gradually getting better and better. And, he made the finals of the Australian Open 2 years ago with Eric Buderak, and that partnership didn't continue, and he's now changed, and he's playing with Rajiv Ram, and they had a fantastic year, and they ended up the year, I think it was 7 in the doubles team standings. And just so happy for him and very proud of him because he's such a top guy as well, and he works extremely hard and deserves every accolade that he gets.
Some of the questions that get thrown around about him is, when is he going to retire? The guy's same age as the Fed, and the same questions get asked about Roger Federer. But let's focus on Raven. He's doing extremely well. I mean, this is the best tennis of his life.
Yeah, Raven's an incredibly good athlete. He's always been very fit, always done a good job of looking after his body. He's very disciplined in the way he looks after his body as well. Yes, he's 35, and he does play only doubles, which makes a big difference. You don't have to play for as long, and you don't have to train for as much. I mean, he'll still spend a lot of time in the gym and making sure his body's healthy. But, especially the way doubles is structured now, there's no deuce. They play one deuce point and the game's finished. So the longest doubles match will ever go is about an hour and a half. So that's really helped him.
No, I can imagine it has, and congratulations to them for getting into the final of the ATP World Tour Finals. Now, let's touch a little bit on Kevin Anderson, your charge. What are his plans going into next year, and where is his state of mind?
Well, very well documented with Kevin. He's had a ton of injuries this year, always been chasing our tail a little bit, and had a knee injury, followed by hip injury, followed by shoulder injury. And just a lot of things that just didn't, every time he was building up a head of steam and starting to play well again, something else hits him. So the #1 priority for next year would obviously be to be healthy. He's working really hard, and he's seeing as many good physios and therapists and doctors that he can see to get as many good opinions as he can. And so the priority number one is to obviously stay healthy. If he stays healthy, we know that he can play great tennis and we know what he's capable of.
We're certainly looking forward to that. Tennis South Africa has appointed a new CEO, Richard Glover. Does it instill confidence in you in the future of South African tennis?
Definitely. You know, Richard, I met up with him a few weeks ago, and he's someone who really has a vision. He knows his strengths and his weaknesses and what he does, and he's getting to speak to a lot of ex-tennis players and ask for their opinions. And, you know, I said to him, I said, well, tennis players are not necessarily great administrators. You know, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but we can only give you advice as to what we know has worked in the past and give you some guidance as to what we think maybe goes forward. And he's taken a lot of that on board, and I think he's going to do a great job. It's very exciting.
Yeah, and I've had the honor and opportunity of meeting with him as well, and I think he definitely has his finger on the pulse, and we should see some good things coming out of Tennis South Africa. And talking about good things coming out, I know the ATP has launched the Next Generation Tournament, which is literally being launched for next year in November. What can you tell us about that?
So it was something they started this year with obviously a push of trying to push the new young stars of the ATP, which is the next generation. So you're talking about the leader of that pack would obviously be a Dominic Thiem, who qualified for the ATP World Tour Finals now. He had the most incredible first 6 months of the year and won nearly 50 matches in the first 6 months, which is unbelievable. The other one is Alexander Zverev. He's a young kid, very, very good. Nick Kyrgios is obviously well publicized with him. You have a couple of young Americans. You have Taylor Fritz, Francis Tiafoe. You know, there's a bunch of good guys coming through. And obviously someone that we haven't spoken about who's been injured for most of this year is Thanasi Kokkinakis, the young Australian guy. Right. Super good guy, super talented. And they wanted to showcase the youngsters, and that's what they're going to do next year. They're having an actual event for, I think it's under 23s.
We're certainly hoping that the next time we speak about the next gen, we're also mentioning 1 or 2 South Africans in that mix, you know, both men and women, and hopefully that means that Richard Glover has been successful in the very top of his agenda and stuff. Nedville, thank you so much for coming through. Really appreciate the value that you bring to a discussion such as this, and certainly hope the best for you and Kevin going into next year.
Thanks, Kendall.
There you have it, Neville Godwin, tennis coach supremo, also Kevin Anderson's coach, helping us understand a little bit about what to expect in the future, as well as a short review of the ATP World Tour Finals. That's where we leave it with the sport. We have a quick look at the weather, and that's going to be all that we're going to be doing for Newsroom today. We'll be back tomorrow morning, same time, same place. Be sure to come back 9 o'clock in the morning. Until then, Lisa Lindsay.